Chapter 242. The blazing flames lit up the sky. The dazzling light illuminated the far and near as if it was daytime. Even from 100 miles away, that rumbling sound could still be heard. Looking at the place where the flashing red fireballs intersected, the group of people stopped in shock. The Funxiang Valley group, led by Shangwan Su, with Li Sun, Lu Shun, and a few others, together with Qin Yin sect Lu Sueki and Tianyin Temple Faxiang, were on the ancient path 100 miles away from the 7-mile cave. Looking at the chaotic flashes, Li Sun frowned and said, "Seems like something happened." Faxiang gazed afar, and a deep voice said, "That fire evil energy is soaring to the sky. It's very strange. I'm afraid there are evil demons causing mischief." Li Sun turned his head and glanced at Lu Sueki, who was standing beside, saw that the girl was still cold and did not say a word. He spoke to Shangwan Su. "Shangwan, teacher uncle, what should we do?" Faxiang and the rest looked at Shangwan Su at the same time. Shangwan Su was gazing afar. His expression suddenly became very strange, like bewildered, like stunned. Right now, after hearing Li Sun's question, as if he was suddenly startled awake, his body shook, and then his expression returned to normal. After a slight hesitation, he said, "Since it is evil demons and evil demons, we are duty-bound, and naturally, all the more we should go. There's no time to lose. We must hurry over." Looking at the rising evil flames, most likely the evil people's skills are not low. The poison will be even deeper. If we arrive earlier, we can save many more lives. Faxiang put his palms together and said, "Shangwan, teacher uncle, is right." Shangwan Sun nodded and said, "So, I'll go first. All of you hurry up." After speaking, without waiting for others to speak, he waved his hand. A gray light flashed. He transformed into a bright light and charged up to the sky, speeding towards the direction of the 7-mile cave. Humph! A cold snort was heard from the crowd. Everyone was startled. It was Lu Shun who was standing there, his expression disapproving. Li Sun was a little embarrassed. After all, these two were his seniors. He could not say anything, turned to Faxiang and Lu Sueki and said, "Then let's go quickly." Faxiang and Lu Sueki nodded, rose to the sky at the same time. Li Sun followed. Lu Shun's face was unwilling, but Shangwan Su's position in their hearts was clearly much higher than his. In addition to Li Sun's words, the disciples all followed, leaving only Lu Shun. In the end, he could only quietly curse a few times, flew up. At the front, Faxiang and Anan flew up side by side. Li Sun behind them took off slightly slower than them, but by now he was gradually catching up. Just when Li Sun was about 10 feet away, Lu Sueki suddenly muttered to himself, "Shangwan Shu is really fast." Faxiang was beside her, surrounded by the golden light of reincarnation pearl, his moon-white monk robe fluttering in the wind. Right now, he turned his head slightly to look at Lu Sueki, saw this girl dressed in white like snow, her face cold like frost, like a fairy soaring in the night sky, cold and beautiful. His eyes lit up, and a meaningful smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He said in a low voice, "Yes, he's walking so fast." Hiss! The sound of the wind. Li Sun caught up, flew side by side with them, and after a while, Lu Shun also caught up. And right now, it must be because Shangwan Su's skills were really unfathomable. In front of the four of them, they could no longer see his figure. In the 7-mile cave, the battle became more and more intense. The great shaman on the platform, although it was strenuous, but under the urging of his mysterious shaman power, that black staff inlaid with bone jade emitted stronger and stronger red light, enveloping the entire 7-mile cave valley. Under the terrible, huge fireball attacks in the sky, it still managed to hold on. A few times the red screen shook violently, looked like it was about to collapse from the huge fireballs, but the great shaman waved his hands and feet, making strange movements, and actually held on. Just that no one was standing near. If not, they would see the great shaman's wrinkled face, bleeding from the 7 apertures. Most likely he was already an arrow at the end of its flight. And in the valley, the Miao, Li, 2 tribes fighting, the situation was even more disadvantageous to the Miao tribe. The Miao warriors who originally revered the great shaman like a deity right now saw that the great shaman was actually being suppressed by that devil-like evil demon in the sky, in addition to the one in 1,000 years dog deities barking at the sky. An ominous omen. Despair reverberated in everyone's hearts. On the contrary, the Lee tribe warriors' morale was high. Even their eyes were red from the killing. Ghostly stood at a distance, frowning tightly. The spell casted by that mysterious person in the sky was extremely rare and strange. Especially there was a trace of strange black fire in the flames. He had never heard of it before. Even in the ancient books collected by Ghost King's sect, there was no record of it. The southern border, there was actually such a person. The world was indeed vast, hidden dragons and crouching tigers. There was nothing that one could not do. Ghostly saw that the great shaman was gradually unable to hold on and was about to fly up to help. Suddenly cries were heard from afar. Most of them were women and children's voices. Turning his head to look, near the hill where the Miao women and children were hiding, a group of Lee tribe warriors had unknowingly found them. Immediately, like a flock of sheep entering wolves, a carnage. Ghost Lee's body trembled. For the past 10 years, he had experienced numerous bloody scenes, but he had never killed these innocent commoners who had no power to retaliate. For some reason, at this moment, the cries of these women and children, like a sharp sword, pierced into his heart. When he was young, that scene of mountains of corpses and seas of blood, that tragedy in Grass Temple Village, those relatives and neighbors who had watched him grow up, did they also die like that? Xiao Bai, who was standing beside, suddenly turned her head. A thick stench of blood and evil energy slowly emanated from this man beside her. His eyes had suddenly turned red. In the Miao crowd, a woman screamed miserably as she was chopped down by the Lee tribe warriors. A child behind her, his face full of fear, opened his mouth wide and ran with big strides, but could not make a sound because he was that mute who delivered Ghost Lee's meals. That murderer whose face was splashed with blood grinned hideously and chased up. In a few steps he was behind the child, raised his sharp stone axe high and heavily chopped down. The child fell down powerlessly. At the last moment of his life, he opened his mouth wide in despair. Bang! Blood splattered everywhere, suddenly blossomed in the night. Such a strong body in an instant crumbled and fell down like rain. Ghostly bathed in the sea of blood and foul wind, his eyes red, breathing deeply. Facing the sky, a long howl. The sound was so mournful, like the desperate cry of a ferocious ghost. 10 years of struggling in the darkness, straight up to the blue sky. The crowd was awed. That child's body trembled. Looking at the black stick in Ghost Lee's hand instantly brightened, flashing with a bloodthirsty and greedy strange light. The next moment, the several Lee tribe warriors who were chasing after the women and children, in that moment of shock, were all torn apart by the invisible evil power. Countless amounts of blood shot up to the sky, converged like a flood in the air, surrounding that desperate and crazy figure, flowing rapidly and then gradually being sucked into the sinister orb in Ghost Lee's hand. The entire battlefield, stopped in shock, looked at this demon-like figure, their eyes filled with fear. The sinister orb became brighter and brighter. The familiar cold feeling was not only circulating in his body. Right now, the sinister orb, which had absorbed the blood of several people, seemed to be reborn, its evil power surging. The strange red light became brighter and brighter, reflected in Ghost Lee's eyes, like ghost fire. Xiao Bai stood far away, staring in a daze at that figure which was gradually becoming bloody and crazy. Suddenly turned her head away, unwilling to look again. In the night, wind and blood rain seemed to be her soft sigh. The desire which had disappeared for a long time, the cry buried deep in his heart, the untamed arrogance which had flashed past since ancient times, suddenly rose again. He howled. Heaven and earth responded. The fire in the sky, the red veil on the ground, trembled at the same time. In that bloody light, a hideous grin seemed to come from the netherworld. One stepped out. The stench of blood instantly filled the surroundings. Numerous people scattered and fled, not understanding why this person who was supposed to be saving people suddenly became a demon. Just the sweetness of the blood was right in front of him, intoxicating and uncontrollable, He breathed heavily. In the madness, was there still a trace of pain? Because of the madness and loneliness? Or because of loneliness and madness? The sinister orb was right beside his hand, accompanying him, never leaving or abandoning him, just that flickering red light seemed to be mocking the world. Sink into oblivion. Sink into oblivion. All beings are like ants. Life is lonely. He stretched out his hand to grab. Blood dripped down from the edge of his fingers. That mute youth under his palm trembled and, unable to move, could only see a stretch of red veil covering the sky and covering the sun approaching. That was at the moment of death. Zhang! Shout! Fan! In the horizon, this voice suddenly came, like cutting ice and snow, like a phoenix crying the 9 heavens. Endless anger, endless sorrow. Ainin Sweki, dressed as white as snow, broke through the air in the bloody light. Tianya in her hand suddenly unsheathed. The blue light shone, reflecting her face, her eyes, her anger and sorrow. The red light abruptly rose, clashing head-on. Thunder roared. In that instant the ground within a radius of 10 zhongs cracked. Not far away, that river already dyed red by blood. The river water even more reversed up to the sky, burning the entire horizon red. In the blossoming blood, the great shaman in the distance was already unable to withstand. The red veil gradually weakened. Huge fireballs started to pass through the red veil, crashed into the 7-mile cave ground. In the deafening cries, the fire blazed like hell on earth. In the sea of fire, the red and blue fought and then separated. The white-attired lady slowly landed, her face without a trace of blood. In front of her, that person panting softly, surrounded by the ominous red flames. The person holding the blood-devouring evil stick. The hot wind ruffled her clothes and hair. In the fire, her body was clearly trembling slightly. Only the hand holding Tianya, because of the strength, did not move a bit. A sharp sound rose. Fa Xiang, Li Su, and others landed behind Ainin. But in the crowd, only Shangwan Su was not seen. Everyone saw that demon-like ghostly, his entire body covered in blood, his face even more ferocious. Those who knew him in the past were all aghast. Li Sun was still slightly better, but Fa Xiang's eyes flashed in inextinguishable pain. His body also seemed to tremble, quietly chanting Buddha. You. The expression on Ainin's face could not maintain her usual coldness. There was only sadness and anger. At this moment, she could not even continue to speak. Li Su stood at the side, saw Ainin's expression in his eyes. He was a smart person. Naturally, he would not think Ainin's loss of composure was only because of anger. Sha Danan, Li Su shouted, his face solemn and angry, said angrily, the Goon and border tribesmen never had any relation with Central Plains. What kind of hatred do you have with them? Do you want to kill people for fun? Ghostface and Ainin's body almost shook at the same time. Ghostface, who was shrouded by the sinister orb's red light, slowly looked around. Miao and the tribes had fought for a long time. The hatred between the two tribes was as deep as the sea, and this time it was a life and death battle. They did not show any mercy. The ground was littered with dead bodies. Most of them were unbearable to look at, died horribly. What's more, the large number of Miao women and children who were chased by the Li tribe warriors were also dead. The hatred between Li tribe and Miao tribe was absolutely irreconcilable. Even to the women and children, the tragic scene, in addition to the burning fire, created a hell on earth. And Ghostface, who was drowned in blood, at this moment, no matter in anyone's eyes, he was the murderer who caused all of this. He was like a bloodthirsty demon king, fiercely standing on the slaughterhouse. Greedy and evil, violent and mad. Perhaps there was also a deep sense of despair. The mellow yang energy that came late seemed to be suppressed by the sinister orb's demonic power until it was unable to move. Only now did it release drop by drop, counteracting the icy cold energy entangling deep in his heart. Just that he suddenly laughed bitterly. Maybe he would rather not wake up. Through the burning fire, that white-attired lady's sorrowful gaze penetrated all the obstacles in the world. directly piercing into Hu's heart. She slowly raised the sword in her hand, Tinya's light like autumn waters. Zhang Xiao Fan. A faint voice from the other side of the burning fire quietly traveled over. She bit her lips, tears flowed down her face. The tears mixed with blood beads, gently dripped on Tianya's sword, quietly slid down. When it landed, it had already turned into blood water. Who is it? Hurt Hu's heart. Ah! Ghost faced to the sky and howled. In the sea of fire. Although his heart was clear, he was mad. Break it! Break it! Sever the past into two. He grinned hideously in the fire, using madness to cover the pain. The sinister orb soared with boundless bloodlight, accompanying its master towards the side of righteousness, charging. Someone, far away, softly sighed, but in the end, no one could hear it. That despairing figure was like before. The righteous people all shouted angrily and guarded, reflected in Lu Sueki's bright eyes. That figure. Her lips, slightly trembled, whispered to herself, that madly charging person. Sha Danan. She used a voice that no one could hear, quietly, for the third time called. Then, she held her sword and charged, her clothes as white as snow, like a haggard but still so beautiful lily in the fire. Clang! In the sharp sound, Tianya's sword's light shone, covered the sky. The sinister orb's red light was like a ghost, looming in the blue light. No matter how strong the blue light was, it could not completely suppress it. Rumble, the huge fire fell from the sky. The two figures separated and then reunited again. In this hell-like place, the two people finally fought again. Even though the two figures in the fire were so desolate. Ahitai could not come back to his senses. Originally, everything was going smoothly, but unexpected things happened. Strange things happened one after another in the 7-mile cave. Strange people appeared one after another, and all of them were cultivators. Among them, there were even masters that even he was afraid of. However, those people below him were also very baffled. They didn't even say a few words before they started fighting among themselves, leaving him hanging to the side. And the tribe who had the upper hand, after being attacked by these people, were shocked like the Miao tribe, all retreated to the side. Ahitai cursed in his heart. At that moment, he could not care so much, and before he left the mountain, that demon king's cold words still echoed in his ears. As long as you take back your Li tribe's sacred jade bone, and then take back the Miao tribe's sacred black staff, then the Li tribe's replacement of the Miao tribe will be irreversible. He took a deep breath, once again focused his attention on that great shaman who was still stubbornly resisting. With a loud roar, he who was in the clouds suddenly opened his arms. In a moment, blood came out from the 14 joints on his hands. Almost at the same time, the black fire and the countless huge fireballs at the same time all shot out from the layers of clouds, smashed down towards the great shaman. The fragile red screen, finally, could not hold on any longer under the continuous impact of the fireballs. After a while, it suddenly disappeared. In an instant, the entire 7-mile cave was in a sea of fire, and the great shaman, after a howl, fell to the ground. Ahitai was overjoyed, dashed down from the air, in a blink dashed to the platform where the great shaman was. The great shaman struggled to stand up with the help of the black staff, hissed, You are crazy," actually begging the demon beast. Ahitai did not wait for him to finish. With a kick, this already weak old man fell down. At the same time, snatched the black staff. Carefully looked at the tip of the black staff. It was indeed the Li tribe's sacred weapon, the jade bone, that they had been yearning for 200 years. He was extremely pleased with himself. Without another word, he was about to step forward and finish off this trusted enemy of the Li clan for hundreds of years. But out of the corner of his eye, he saw that some of the people from the other clans had already noticed this place and were flying over. Ahitai was shocked, decided not to be a busybody. Anyway, after this battle, the great shaman under the Demon King's evil power was already like a useless person and would not pose any threat to the Li tribe. He made up his mind in an instant, hugged the black staff to his chest. His mouth swiftly recited the mysterious incantation. The next moment the sky, full of fire, descended, crowding around him, and then charged up into the sky, in the raging flames disappearing, leaving behind a hell-like 7-mile cave and a frail old man on the platform, panting in despair, crying out, "Demon beasts! That is the demon beast! How dare you?" Chapter 243. The blazing fire clouds in the horizon gradually dimmed. Ahitai concealed himself in the dark clouds, swiftly distanced himself from the 7-mile cave. An hour later, when he was certain that there were no outsiders following him, he slowly descended from the cloud and landed in a valley. Right now, the Li tribe and Miao tribe could be said to be both sides suffering heavy losses, but Ahitai did not seem to be in a hurry to find the remaining Li tribe members. He carefully examined the black staff in his hand. A mysterious shaman power faintly roamed around the body of the black staff, causing the hot blood in this Li tribe member's body to gradually reverberate. He could even imagine the scene of him wielding the jade bone black staff and commanding the southern border. The glorious great shaman of the past would be him tomorrow. As for the panicking clansmen, there was no need to worry too much. Anyway, that clan leader was bent on revenge, so let him fight to his heart's content. Otherwise, with this boorish personality, he would probably be an obstacle to him controlling the Li clan. Ahitai coldly laughed, clutching the jade bone black staff tightly to his chest. At this moment, he no longer had any fear. He didn't even care about the Demon King who had transferred his power to him. Even though right now he knew that he was far from being that Demon King's match, but he and the great shaman both knew that mysterious Demon King's background and situation. Without gathering the 5 sacred weapons of the southern border 5 tribes, that Demon King could forget about reviving and being reborn from the 10,000 great mountain subdued demon cave. Once he thought that even that terrifying Demon King who made the entire southern border tremble was played by him, Ahitai was so excited that he could not control himself and laughed out loud. The voice reverberated in the night sky and within the valley. Ha ha ha! Just as he was laughing heartily, suddenly a soft clap sounded from the darkness on the other side of the valley. At the same time, a low and faint voice sounded, "Amazing, amazing!" Ahitai's body shook and quickly turned around, but all he could see was darkness. He could not see anything clearly. He loudly shouted, "Who is it? Stand out!" In the darkness, 2 balls of scarlet flames suddenly lit up. They were as big as a bucket, followed by a burst of low breathing sound, like a huge beast growling in the darkness. Ahitai's expression changed drastically, just that the 2 balls of fire did not move and only stared at Ahitai in the darkness. Instead, a black-clothed man slowly appeared from the darkness in front of the scarlet fire. This person looked as if he had come out from the darkness. His entire body was covered in black from head to toe. Only his 2 eyes could be seen, and they were so empty that it was terrifying. Looking at his stiff body, he actually didn't walk out. Instead, he floated out 2 feet above the ground. The pupils in Ahitai's eyes contracted. The expression on his face was even more nervous, as if he had seen a devil. That black-attired man unhurriedly said, "Ahitai, you really did not let the beast deity down. Snatch the jade bone and the black staff." Ahitai subconsciously gripped the jade bone black staff tighter. This action was seen by the black-attired man, and behind him, the 2 balls of scarlet fire in the darkness. Another angry roar was heard. The black-attired man raised his hand slightly. The strange creature in the darkness then calmed down a little. Then he unhurriedly said, "Ahitai, looking at you, it seems like you do not want to keep your promise to the beast deity and hand over the 2 sacred weapons to us." Ahitai's expression changed, uncertain. Obviously, that beast deity was an extremely terrifying existence in his heart, but after a few intense struggles in his heart, finally his greed won out. "Hey!" Ahitai revealed a vicious expression, sneered, and said, "I now have the black staff, jade bone. These are the sacred weapons that almost destroyed the beast deity. If you're not afraid of death, come and try." The black-attired man was silent for a moment, unhurriedly said, "In that case, you really want to betray the beast deity." Ahitai raised the jade bone black staff, felt the shaman power in his body surging, really felt that the world was in his hands, laughed wildly, and said, "So what? Don't think I don't know. Without the southern border 5 tribes' sacred weapons, the beast deity will not be able to revive in the subdued demon cave. If not for him, even if you and that evil dragon behind you, in front of my sacred weapons, what are they?" Ha 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 ha! The 2 balls of fire behind the black-attired man made low roars, obviously extremely furious. The black-attired man was instead very calm, coldly looked at Ahitai and said, "Don't you forget, these 5 tribes' sacred weapons. What is their origin? You southern border barbarians, at most can only wield 30% of their shaman power. If not for that, even if you have the beast deity to impart to you, how will you be able to snatch it from that old shaman of the Meow tribe?" His voice gradually deepened, his words even more icy, said, "I am warning you for the last time. Do not go against the beast deity." Ahitai's heart, for some reason, suddenly thumped. Even he himself could feel his body trembling slightly. But the next moment, he once again gripped the jade-bone black staff tightly. "Go and die." His eyes widened, waved the black staff. Instantly a black fire surged out from the black staff, swiftly charging towards the black-attired man. Everywhere it passed, a stretch of charred black. The black-attired man coldly snorted, without any movement. The black fire was suddenly blocked by an invisible force 3 chi in front of him. But looking at Ahitai's expression, he did not show any surprise. Evidently, he was just testing the waters. On the contrary, after this attack, he had already confirmed the long conjecture in his heart. As expected, the Jade-Bone Blackstaff, these sacred weapons, were able to unleash the shaman power 10 times stronger than what the beast deity had imparted to him. If it was usual, he would need to exert his powers for half a day, but now it was done with just a wave. Thinking of this, Ahitai was even more complacent. How would he still regard this black-attired man in front of him? Again laughed wildly. The black-attired man looked at Ahitai's insolence, did not show any anger, only indifferently said, "The beast deity is indeed wise, knows that you are a sinister person. Once you succeed, you will definitely betray." Ahitai sinisterly laughed. "So what? From the demon-subdued cave below the beast deity, there are indeed numerous powerful demons and monsters, but other than you, this shaman demon, who else can come out? Now, with your weak skills, don't tell me you still want to snatch the sacred weapon from my hands?" The black-attired man looked at Ahitai's arrogant face, suddenly laughed mockingly, did not speak further, stretched his hand into his bosom, and took out an object. Once this object left the shaman demon's bosom, it immediately emitted a faint glow. Looking from afar, it was a bead glimmering with black light. In this dark night, if one did not look carefully, one would not be able to see it clearly. Ahitai glanced at the bead a few times, couldn't help but feel nervous. Although he said he was not afraid of this mysterious black-attired man, but although the shaman demon's shaman power was not that strong, but it had always been one of the most important helpers under the beast deity, nobody knew what kind of mysterious powers he actually had. Just when he was secretly considering whether to attack immediately and stop this black-attired man from playing any tricks, that black-attired man closed his palms and made an even stranger action. His hands clenched, a sound was heard, the black bead was actually crushed. The next moment, the fragments like sand slid down from his palms. Ahitai was startled by his actions, focused his attention, and prepared. The shaman demon's poison skills. He had heard of it before. Just that the mountain breeze blew past, the fragments were carried away by the wind, and the direction of the wind was completely opposite to his. He waited for a while, but nothing happened. Ahitai laughed loudly, said, "What tricks are you playing? No matter what you do, what can you do to me?" Before he finished, his voice abruptly stopped, as if something was stuck in his throat. Almost at the same time, suddenly, a firelight lit up in the dark night, illuminating the surroundings, extremely bright. And the source of the fire was actually shot out from Ahitai's body. The next moment, a series of muffled sounds were heard. Ahitai's body, from inside out, shot out several beams of light. Looking at it, it was as if several holes were opened up in his body at the same time. It was comical and terrifying. Ahitai could not speak another word. His mouth opened wide, slowly raised his head, his face filled with fear and disbelief. The black-attired man coldly floated in front of him, slowly said, "The beast deity had long expected that you are unreliable." When he passed the black fire to you, he purposely left this black fire essence pearl behind. As long as this black fire essence pearl is destroyed, the power of the black fire will definitely bite back at its owner, making you die under the power that the beast deity passed to you. Ahitai's eyes were filled with fear and regret. He opened his mouth, but only made hoarse panting sounds. The next moment, muffled sounds were heard continuously. The black fire howled out from his body, swallowing his entire body, burning fiercely. In a short while, this ambitious man had already turned into ashes. Only the jade-boned black staff, still lying quietly in the ashes. The black-attired man floated over, waved his hand, and the jade-boned black staff was sucked into his hand. He sneered and was about to leave when he suddenly turned his head and looked at the other side of the valley. In a deep voice he said, "Who is it?" In the darkness, after a long silence, a figure slowly walked out, gray-attired with white beard, his face full of wrinkles. It was Fun Xiang Valley Shangguan Su. Right now, he looked at that black-attired man, and then looked at the two balls of fire behind him filled with enmity, and finally his eyes landed on the jade-bone black staff in the black-attired man's hand. Chapter 244. His appearance, suddenly, seemed to have aged 30 years. The black-attired man obviously did not expect to meet Shangguan Su at this place, and looking at him, he seemed to be an old acquaintance of Shangguan Su. After the initial shock, the black-attired man was silent for a moment, then slowly said, "We have not met for 80 years, right, old friend?" The wrinkles on Shangguan Su's face looked like they were carved by a knife. "You all," he slowly said word by word, "finally still can't hold back and want to come out?" The black-attired man's black clothes fluttered in the night breeze, but his figure did not move an inch in the air, just like his voice unhurriedly said, "Beast deity lord is already impatient from waiting." Shangguan Su unhurriedly said. At that time me and Yun Elon's senior brother had said it in front of the beast deity lord. The black-attired man suddenly interrupted, "Your Valley Master senior brother's words. Do you believe it yourself?" Shangguan Su suddenly did not speak. The black-attired man faintly smiled, said, "Old friend, you and I each serve different masters. The future will be dangerous. You take care." After speaking, he hugged the black staff in his arms. His entire body retreated. In a blink, disappeared into the darkness. Shangguan Su's eyes twitched, his body moved, as if he wanted to do something but opposite in the darkness. The two balls of crimson fire suddenly blazed. The roars abruptly became louder. The black-attired man's voice was heard from afar in the darkness. "Old friend, your skills are profound, far superior to me. But I have the evil dragon, and with the black staff Jadebone, you will not be able to stop me. You and I have many years of friendship. Better show some mercy." Shangguan Su's figure abruptly halted. The next moment, the two balls of crimson fire also gradually disappeared in the darkness. Between heaven and earth, only he was left standing in the desolate cold valley. After a long time, a long and drawn-out sigh was heard. The night turned darker. In the 7-mile cave, the originally prosperous and beautiful land, right now, was already submerged in a sea of fire. Cries everywhere. The Miao tribe's revered great shaman was seriously injured, and it was hard to tell whether he was dead or alive. Ahitai, whom the Li tribe had pinned their hopes on, suddenly disappeared. Many outsiders suddenly came to the 7-mile cave, and among them, a figure like an evil spirit suddenly appeared. Under such circumstances, the Li and Miao tribes lost their will to fight. The Li tribe slowly retreated out of the 7-mile cave, and the Miao tribe did not have the heart to pursue. All went to help the injured in their homes. At the same time, numerous people with enmity looked at those outsiders who were still in the 7-mile cave. And those people's attention did not even notice the surrounding Miao tribe. In their eyes, there was only the red and blue lights fighting in the air. Both the righteous and demonic paths of the Central Plains, the most outstanding young cultivators of a new generation, in this strange mountain valley, vaguely desolate place, engaged in a life and death struggle. Lu Sueki's Tianya's blue light became brighter and brighter, covering the sky and earth, whistling over, as if when she waved her hand, the sky was turning, the earth was moving, the wind howled fiercely, groups of ghosts fled. There was actually an unstoppable force. Under her sword light, indistinctly that determined and haggard face could be seen, without a trace of expression, and when she attacked, there was not the slightest bit of mercy. The sound of the swords cutting through the air covered the heaven and earth, crazily surged in from all directions, and then disappeared. Ghostly laughed wildly, galloping in the rain of swords. The sinister orb seemed to have a spirit, excitedly glowing red, like an evil spirit howling to the sky, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws to fight. That sword, like frost and snow, floated down. Someone with a long cry went up against the sky. Tianya devouring blood Tianya. After the insufferably arrogant, emotionless magical weapon that changed the winds and clouds. Who followed? What kind of gaze? Lu Sueki did not know. That waves after waves, like huge waves, like ghosts wailing, like devils howling, like blood-devouring red lights, arrived with a loud bang. The vicious evil power almost made her entire body's blood flow out. Tianya, like snow, transformed into a heaven-splitting gigantic sword, slashed down with a loud bang, splitting the mountain-like red lights into two. The enormous evil power rebounded. Lu Sueki's white clothes fluttered, thrown up into the sky. Looking at her figure, flying in the wind, the sharp sword waving, sharp sounds. In that instant the wind and clouds gathered all around her. That beautiful hair was fluttering, brushing past her fair face, the original color of a jade. Inhaling deeply, she took 7 steps continuously, like a fairy dancing in the clouds, before she could open her mouth to chant. The sky had already swept away the clouds, transformed into a vortex, trembling violently. 9 heavens Xian Sha transform into divine thunder. Brilliant heaven's might, lead by the sword. The ancient incantation once again mysteriously reverberated in the horizon. That white figure reflected in whose eyes, like a wildly dancing lily. 10 years of time, in this foreign land swaying in the wind and rain, in this place where heaven and earth changed color, where the wind and clouds gathered, one by one appeared. The enormous and deep dark vortex spun rapidly in the horizon. The lightning scurried, the wind howled. Lu Sueki stood in the air, her white clothes fluttering. Qing Yun Sek's supreme skill, celestial sword wield, thundered true formula. In her hands, displayed a myriad of phenomena, its power unparalleled. Right now, compared to Tian Bui in the Lubo Hill battle, her aura was not the slightest bit weaker. The surrounding good faction people were all amazed, but this scene, in Ghost Li's eyes, unbeknownst to him, was shocked. Deep in the clouds, under Tanya's sword, at the moment when the endless blue light bloomed, Lu Sueki's figure indistinctly had a trace of faint gold, with a sense of solemnity, and also a sense of strangeness. This was not Qing Yun Sek's magic. The fierce wind howled more and more urgently. This thought flashed past Ghost Li's mind. In his hardened eyes, behind his savage laughter, what was left? Cold gaze looked down from the sky, behind the red light, that unruly and evil figure. Lu Sueki's bright eyes like frost, a long whistle. The sky full of lightning rumbled in unison, reverberated far away, as if tearing apart heaven and earth. Deep in the clouds, innumerable lightnings swiftly gathered, rumbling thunder sounds exploded incessantly in the horizon. The next moment, deep in the dark whirlpool, enormous lightning gathered and formed, charged down, landed on Tianya's sword. That dazzling light seemed to be in her hands. Good swordsmanship. Ghostly laughed loudly. The laughter was mournful, rumbled up in the red light, like a heart-wrenching scream. That high and mighty white figure, peerless grace, was after all so unattainable. The sinister orb shone with endless light. Right now, red, green, black, Three colors of light were all controlled to the fullest by Ghost Lee's evil power. The evil energy thick, wailing and howling towards the horizon, making one's blood run cold. Lu Sueki's face turned colder. The last hesitation in her eyes finally broke. The lightning howled. The deities and Buddhas in the sky chanted together. Far away, someone suddenly cried out. Ghostly, who was fully focused on guarding against that unparalleled, strange skill in the sky. Suddenly a sharp whistle was heard behind him. He was shocked. In a flash he forcefully shifted his body. A sound, a flat-tipped jade ruler, like an invincible celestial weapon, pierced out from his right shoulder. Ghostly bellowed, abruptly turned his head, saw Li Sun holding the jade ruler, his face full of hatred. Ah! He faced the sky and roared, the blood-devouring demon staff with endless red light, instantly chopped down. Li Sun's pupils constricted, but without the slightest fear, his right hand exerted force. See? The jade ruler was pulled out, blood spurting out like a fountain. The red light smashed down. Li Sun resisted with all his might. Funxiang Valley skills were indeed not to be underestimated. In addition, with Ghost Lee's heavy injuries, the red light was unstable. In such a close distance, it was still blocked by Li Sun. Just that the sinister orb was an extremely ferocious object. Moreover, it was a blood-refined, evil treasure linked to Ghost Lee's blood vessels. The next moment, endless evil power attacked from the jade ruler. Li Sun's right hand holding the jade ruler, under this unimaginable evil power, immediately withered at a visible speed. Li Sun was shocked, struggled with all his might, but Ghostly was already close to insanity. Abruptly stretched his hand over, his 5 fingers forming a claw, grabbed onto his right hand. Li Sun felt intense pain. Even cold sweat broke out. At the critical moment, a low Buddhist chant was heard beside him, mixed with a sigh. A gentle golden light surged over, solemn and peaceful. It was Tian En Temple's great Brahmin wisdom. Buddhism's strange skill countered the sinister orb's evil power. Pervasive, extremely ferocious sinister orb's strange power was pushed back by one chi. Taking advantage of this moment, Xiang pulled Li Sun, swiftly retreated. Just that in his eyes was filled with compassion and helplessness, staring at that man's figure swaying in the wind. The enormous white lightning in the horizon at this moment descended from the sky with unparalleled power, extremely accurate, and struck Ghost Lee. Chapter 245. Everyone held their breaths. That figure disappeared in the enormous white light pillar. The white-attired lady standing in the clouds. Maybe she had used too much strength. She actually staggered, no longer able to maintain her balance, slowly descended. But, where did the sudden laughter come from? Such desolation, yet insufferably arrogant. Red light suddenly appeared in the white light pillar, dark red like blood. That man was bathed in blood, like a mad demon. He dashed out, facing the sky, and howled. The night was dark. Hair disheveled, clothes torn, blood sprayed like mist. Only the sinister orb was bright, illuminating the entire night sky. He lifted his head and stared, charging straight up. The wind was biting cold, the smell of blood. Ainan's face was as white as snow, without a trace of blood. Watching that figure pouncing over, she subconsciously thrust out Tianya. The blue light was 10,000 zhongs, in a blink pierced through the blood mist, right before him. That wound, in front of her. Tianya trembled slightly. That gaze, deep, crazy yet so familiar. Still remember, many years ago, the youth who once disregarded everything, the red light exploded, drowned the two of them. Ghostly cries filled the sky. The good faction people exclaimed. One after another flew up. Just that before they could react, another strange white figure, like lightning, flew up. In the red light, a bloodied palm, like a devil's hideous grin, grabbed towards her. Just that, Tianya quietly drooped down. She stood alone in the wind and rain, facing him, silently gazing at him. The bloody palm, pressed on her clothes, surging demonic power, roared beside the palm. That pair of crazed and blood-red eyes was right before her, whose heart, gently beating, the red light dispersed, a figure fell down. Anan stood in the air, her eyes tightly shut. On her clothes, There was a bloodstain, a ghastly sight. After the storm, would there still be tears before the good faction people? The sudden white figure snatched the unconscious Ghostly, carried him, and moved horizontally. It was Xiaobai. She looked at Ghostly's injuries, frowned, shook her head and sighed, softly said, "I really can't stand you. Even if you value relationships, you don't have to be so cruel." Ghostly did not reply. A person who had lost consciousness would not speak. But the good faction people, after the initial shock, all started to shout. Xiaobai looked over. Her bright and charming eyes immediately stifled everyone. Lu Sueki slowly landed. The bloody handprint on her clothes was like a carving, especially eye-catching on her white clothes. Everyone could almost imagine how close the devil's hand had been to death for this woman. However, she actually managed to escape this calamity. The one who was seriously injured was still that devil cult sorcerer. The Jadian's younger generation's elites were indeed extraordinary. Xiao Bai's gaze swept across the crowd and finally landed on Anan. She looked at her carefully for a moment and nodded her head. She smiled and said, "You are indeed a peerless beauty. No wonder you can make men crazy for you." After speaking, she first looked at Ghostly in her arms and then intentionally or unintentionally turned to look at Li Sun, who was standing aside with a pained expression. A trace of anger flashed past Li Sun's face. His right hand was counterattacked by Ghost Li's blood-devouring evil power. Half of his palm looked like it was scorched and withered. It looked terrible, and he did not know if it would affect his future cultivation. This time, when he heard this seductive lady's sarcastic words, he immediately roared, "Who are you? This Ghost Li is an evil sect evildoer with heinous crimes, if you know what's good for you." "Huh?" Xiaobai suddenly laughed out. Facing the group of good faction people, she purposely hugged the unconscious Ghostly tighter. Immediately, the surrounding people looked askance. At the same time, with disdain, indifferently said, "Don't you know, I have never known what's good for me." Li Sun was stunned. For a moment, he did not know what to say. At the same time, the pain in his right hand became more and more intense. His heart was even more anxious. And, at this moment, a surprised exclamation was heard from behind. "Nine-tailed evil fox. She is the nine-tailed evil fox." Everyone was shocked. Lu Sueki and Fa Xiang did not know the secret of Funxiang Valley Inferno altar. So be it, but Funxiang Valley disciples were in chaos. The person who exclaimed was the oldest Lu Shun. Xiaobai glanced at Lu Shun a few times, thought for a moment, nodded and said, "You this old man, are you that cowardly guy who hid behind you in Elon and Shangwan? So those two old thieves?" Lu Shun was immediately flushed with anger. His finger pointed at Xiaobai, trembling with anger. Under the sneaky glances from the surrounding people, he angrily said, "What are you looking at? Still not attacking. Catch this evildoer." Xiaobai laughed lightly, carrying Ghost Li, and prepared to rise. Lu Shun flew up first, intercepted, but unexpectedly Xiaobai snorted, did not even look at him. A white figure floated. A faint light flew out from her sleeve, struck Lu Shun's sword. Lu Shun in the air, with a muffled groan, fell back, seemed like he was at a disadvantage. Everyone turned pale, although Lu Shun's reputation was not comparable to his peers like Funxiang Valley Master Yun Elon and Shang Wansu, but he was after all still one of the older generation figures in Funxiang Valley. But under this nine-tailed celestial fox, he was actually blocked in one round. This evildoer's skills could be imagined. Immediately, everyone shouted and pounced forward. Xiaobai frowned slightly, her face disdainful, her body swayed, consecutively flashed past several people, and was about to fly up. Suddenly, a pure Buddhist chant was heard from behind. A stretch of golden light surged over. Xiaobai frowned. For the first time, she revealed a surprised expression, turned around, and waved her sleeve. A faint green light flew out and blocked the golden light. "Great Brahmin wisdom." She looked at Fa Xiang, nodded and said, "Didn't expect Tianyin Temple to produce such a talent like you. Indeed worthy of being a good faction big sect that can stand shoulder to shoulder with Qinyan." Fa Xiang placed his palms together and said, "Thank you, patron, for your compliment." Although his words were polite, but after he placed his palms together, the golden light became even brighter. A dazzling golden pearl flew out from his sleeve, spinning nonstop, swiftly heading toward Xiaobai. Xiaobai snorted, The green light retracted. Her entire body carrying ghostly floated up, straight up to the sky. The next moment, the place where she was standing was hit by the reincarnation pearl, a loud sound. The entire ground was hit by the Buddhist force. A 2-zhong-wide crater was formed. Not wanting to be entangled anymore, Xiaobai took the opportunity to turn and leave. Unexpectedly, she had just moved. A dazzling blue light, sharp sounds instantly filled the heaven and earth, covering the sky and covering the earth. It was Lu Sueki's Tianya, celestial sword. Xiaobai's face turned cold, suddenly stretched out her hand, directly inserted it into the thousands of sword rays. A clear reverberation was heard. Lu Sueki's sword rays disappeared, a surprised expression on her face. Tianya also returned her hand. Xiaobai did not hesitate. Carrying ghostly, her figure like an apparition, disappeared from the air. Everyone was shocked. The next moment, someone saw a white figure like lightning, sweeping towards the other side of the river, shouted out loudly. Xiaobai was seen flashing into a wooden house. The next moment, before the rest arrived, she flew out from the house window again. Other than ghostly on her shoulder, there was also a small gray figure. It was the monkey Xiao Hui who was still snoring away. When the rest arrived, Xiaobai's figure had already disappeared. The good faction people cursed angrily, but most of them were secretly shocked. This nine-tailed celestial fox's cultivation was so profound, she really could not be underestimated. At this moment, the battle in the 7-mile cave finally completely calmed down. What remained was only a sea of raging fire and the cries of countless Miao people. Far away, the injured Tu-Ma-Gu tribe leader was shouting loudly, leading a group of people running up the mountain, evidently to check on the great shaman's condition. And halfway up the mountain, there were already people surrounding the great shaman. Shouts were heard from afar. When the crowd returned to their original position, the surrounding was filled with blazing flames. The crackling sounds of the fire swallowing the wood were heard. There were even more burnt beams and big wood falling down. The situation was extremely tragic. Fa Xiong shook his head and sighed. His face full of benevolence, was the first to fly into the sea of fire, to help those Miao people fight the fire. Influenced by him, the other Funxiang Valley disciples also followed. Li Sun then felt the pain in his right hand receding slightly. Seemed like as long as he exerted his power to resist it, there would not be much harm. He then felt slightly relieved, heaved a sigh of relief. Just when he was hesitating if he should also go up to fight the fire, a voice was heard from behind. Li's senior brother. Li Sun was surprised, turned back and saw Lu Sueki returning Tianya to its sheath, holding in her hand her white clothes under the fire, still fluttering. That blood-red handprint on her clothes was even more glaring, and she seemed to have no intention to conceal it. Right now, her face was as cold as usual, indifferently looking at Li Sun. Li Sun, for some reason, felt uncomfortable with her gaze, said, "What is it?" "Lu Junior's sister." Lu Sueki quietly looked at Li Sun. After a long while, unhurriedly said, "That wound on his right shoulder, was it caused by you using the Jade ruler?" Li Sun's mouth suddenly felt dry. The next moment, he calmly said, "Yes." Lu Sueki's hand, which was holding Tianya, in that instant tightened. On her fair skin, a faint green seemed to be revealed. Just that her face was still as white and cold as snow, without any expression. She nodded slightly, turned, and walked away. An inexplicable anger suddenly rose in Li Sun's heart. Loudly said, "Lu Junior's sister, what do you mean?" Lu Sueki's body paused. Under the raging flames, her white figure also seemed to be burning. Good ruler skills. Very powerful. A faint voice from that person who did not turn back was heard, word by word, very, very slow, extremely clear. Li Sun suddenly became mute. Lu Sueki walked forward. Suddenly a large house above her which had been burning for a long time, a loud sound, an enormous beam carrying blazing flames, smashed down towards her head. Li Sun was shocked, but before he could shout out, Lu Sueki with a light whistle. For some reason, there was some grief and indignation in the whistle. Her left hand waved. Tanya's celestial sword along with its scabbard swung up. Blue light exploded, in a rumbling sound. This huge wooden beam was smashed into pieces. Innumerable sparks soared, covering the sky and the sun. The next moment they all fell like rain, extremely spectacular, blocking between her and Li Sun, drowning her figure without a trace. Li Sun watched the sky full of fire rain. For a moment was stunned, staring blankly. The night deepened. Xiaobai transformed into a swift white light, traversing between the towering mountains and lofty ridges, leaving 7 Mile Cave. After about an hour, she found a secluded place on a mountainside of a high mountain and stopped. She gently put Ghostly down, placed him on the ground. This man was covered in blood. Quite a lot of it flowed to his hand and was slowly sucked in by the sinister orb which was glimmering with an evil red light. Right now, it seemed, the sinister orb was like an Een spirit possessing Ghost Li's body, unceasingly devouring its master's essence. Xiaobai sighed, stretched out her hand, wanting to take the soul-devouring stick from Ghost Li's hand. Unexpectedly, although Ghost Li was unconscious, his hand was still holding the stick tightly, as if only this thing was the only thing he could rely on. Chapter 246. Xiaobai tugged twice, but was actually unable to take it down from his hand, shook her head and gave up. Just that her gaze then landed on her own hand. Her right hand's middle finger and index finger, the originally white, jade-like finger, right now slowly turned red, indistinctly trembling uncontrollably. Xiaobai smiled, quietly said, "What a good Tianya, it really lives up to its reputation. It really is a divine weapon." A sound was suddenly heard beside her. Xiaobai jumped in fright, turned to look. It was the drunk Xiao Hui who fell down from her shoulder, just happened to land beside its seriously injured master. Its mouth made a few sounds, scratched its head, and actually fell asleep again. Xiaobai was both angry and amused, loudly said, "Damn monkey! Hoo-hoo! That idiot master of yours is about to die. Hoo-hoo!" Xiaobai was speechless, rolled her eyes at the monkey. With one kick kicked the monkey away and then squatted down beside Ghostly, assessed his injuries, shook her head and sighed. The night was as cold as water, the chill seeping into the bones. That coldness, as if he had experienced it many years ago. When Ghostly faintly woke up, this thought flashed past his mind. Opening his eyes, the first thing he saw was a sky full of stars. The southern border's night sky. At this moment, there were no more flames, no more clamor, finally revealed its original peaceful and tranquil side. Above the canopy, innumerable stars adorned it, twinkling. Some big, some small, vaguely like human eyes, maybe a little mischievous, looking at the mortal world with such mockery. An intense pain from his right shoulder, followed by his entire body, soreness and pain. Even someone as strong as him could not help but inhale a breath of cold air. "You are awake." A calm voice with a hint of concern sounded beside him. Ghostly turned his head, saw Xiaobai's face. He propped himself up, just that the movement affected his wounds, could not help but frown. Xiaobai glanced at him, said, "Your injuries are not light. Better have a good rest first." Ghostly looked down, saw the wound on his right shoulder was bandaged with a white bandage. The other small wounds could also be seen to have been treated. There was no one else here. Naturally, it was Xiaobai's contribution when he was unconscious. He said in a low voice, "You saved me, right? Thank you." Xiaobai shrugged his shoulders and said, "I didn't do anything. It's mainly because of your tough life. Even I didn't expect you to survive in that kind of situation." Ghostly snorted. The scenes of the battle in the 7 Mile Cave flashed in his mind. Suddenly he felt disheartened, stood there, did not want to say anything. Xiaobai unhurriedly said, "Speaking of which, it is still the Miao commoners in 7 Mile Cave who are the most unlucky. Not to mention that their homes were burnt down, countless of their clansmen were either dead or injured, even their revered great shaman. I think the odds are against them." Ghost Li's body suddenly shook. What happened to him? Ghost Li's voice suddenly became hoarse. Xiaobai still had that indifferent look, leisurely said, "I remember that old man fought with a strange person in the sky. In the end, he was exhausted and was seriously injured, and even their sacred weapon was." "How is he? Is he dead?" Ghostly abruptly crawled up, interrupted Xiaobai's words. and obviously did not care about the so-called meow sacred weapon. Just that he had just stood up, suddenly a pained expression appeared on his face, his legs turned to jelly, his entire body started to sway and almost fell down. Xiao Bai was about to stretch out her hand to support him. Ghostly was already panting heavily to steady himself, but on his forehead, cold sweat could be seen dripping down. Xiao Bai slowly retracted her hand, quietly looked at him, said, "Why do you have to do this?" Ghostly panted and said, "What exactly happened to the great shaman? Is he all right?" Xiao Bai said, "When I brought you away, I saw the meow people crowding around that old man. Whether he is dead or alive, honestly, I also don't know." Remorse flashed past Ghostly's eyes. He clenched his teeth and turned to leave. Just that after a few steps, he suddenly groaned. The white bandage on his right shoulder had already turned red. At the same time, his face started to twist. Xiao Bai behind him faintly said, "We better take a rest." Qing Yun Sek's celestial, sword-wield, thunder, true formula. How would it be so easy to endure? Ghostly felt the meridians in his body were in a mess, his breathing in disorder. Qing Yun's sex skills that he cultivated, Tian Yin Temple's great Brahmin wisdom, and Tian Shu's secret skills were all in a mess. Ever since he betrayed Qing Yun 10 years ago, he had killed countless people in the evil sect's internal strife, but today was the day where his injuries were the heaviest. Ainin Sweki's cultivation was really advancing at a tremendous pace. His heart carried some bitterness as he muttered, but he still resisted the groans of pain from his body, slowly took a step, and walked forward. "You disregarded your life and still wanted to see that great shaman. It is because of Bai Yao, right?" Xiao Bai's voice faintly came from behind him. Ghostly did not answer, only slowly took the second step. Xiao Bai behind him looked at that stubborn figure, heaved a long sigh, shook her head with a bitter smile, and said, "You are powerful. You are powerful." After speaking, she slowly followed up. But after a moment, she suddenly said, "The white-clothed woman who fought with you tonight, compared to Bai Yao, who do you like more?" Ghostly's body shook, abruptly turned his head and stared intently at Xiao Bai. Xiao Bai's expression did not change. Under Ghostly's fierce gaze, she still smiled and looked at him. Ghostly panted heavily, slowly turned his head and did not look at her. After a moment, he slowly, but as if speaking to his own heart, quietly said, "In this world, only Bai Yao is sincere to me." Xiao Bai was silent. "For her, even if I die, so what?" Ghostly said slowly, and then moved his body forward. In the horizon, the stars were bright and resplendent, sprinkling down on the world. Small Bai Yu sighed and followed. After walking a few steps, she suddenly turned around and shouted towards the place where they were originally resting, "Damn monkey, let's go." "Hoo-hoo!" Xiao Bai. Chapter 6. Tracking the sky gradually brightened. The blazing fire that burned for an entire night in the 7-mile cave finally gradually subsided. But after the flames burned, all that was left were broken fences, broken walls, and charred wood that gave off green smoke. Fa Xiong and the rest, although their skills were high, but after working for an entire night, inevitably there were a few scorch marks on their bodies. A few of the weaker Funxiang Valley disciples even had some black ashes on their faces. Just that, when they stood up again and heaved a sigh of relief, when they looked around again, those ordinary Miao people's gazes towards these outsiders were filled with enmity, not the slightest bit of goodwill towards them because of their help. Fa Xiong laughed bitterly, although he felt wronged, but he could not explain anything, was about to turn back and speak to the others. Suddenly, there was a commotion among the Funxiang Valley people behind him. Fa Xiong was startled, turned back and saw Shangguan descending from the sky, landed on the ground, and unhurriedly walked over. The first to fly away last night, and after a night was the last to arrive, this Funxiang Valley senior immediately made the crowd look at each other. Hee hee! A cold laugh came from Funxiang Valley Lu Shun's mouth. "Senior brother, you are really early." Shangguan Su was expressionless, but his brows were tightly frowned. Indistinctly, he was troubled. He could not be bothered with Lu Shun, walked nearer, and looked around, shook his head slightly, sighed, and spoke to Li Sun. The matters here are more or less settled. You bring the junior brothers back to Funxiang Valley first. Li Sun was actually also full of anger and questions. Had the intention to ask this teacher uncle, where did he go last night? If not with Shangguan, so this highly skilled person around, it would definitely be much easier to deal with Ghostly and would not cause so much trouble. Just that thinking was just thinking. He still did not dare to offend the authority and position in Funxiang Valley second only to the Valley Master Yunilon. Immediately agreed and quietly said, yes. Lu Shun was enraged, spoke to Shangguan. So, what do you mean? Last night you disappeared alone, and today you're giving orders. Shangguan Su indifferently said, I met with a little accident last night. After we returned to the valley, I will tell you in detail. Lu Shun's countenance changed, was about to say something. Shangguan Su was clearly impatient, slightly angrily said, Lao, Asai, let's go back first. Shangguan Su's face showed authority without anger. Being shouted at like that, Lu Shun did not dare to say anything. Li Sun hesitated for a moment, eventually still spoke to Shangguan Su, teacher uncle, after we go back, that nine-tailed celestial fox. Shangguan Su shook his head, said, the nine-tailed celestial fox matter is not urgent. Let's go back first. Li Sun did not dare to say anything, nodded his head in agreement, led the crowd, and left. Before leaving, he could not help but turn back to look at Lu Sweki, who was standing with Ephasion. That white-attired lady's face was cold, did not even look at him. Li Sun heaved a long sigh in his heart. Like a flipped bottle of 5 flavors, the indescribable feeling slowly faded. Lu Shun, although was also unwilling, but still followed. Shangguan sighed, turned around, cupped his fist to Ephasion and Lu Sweki, said, both of you have helped our valley greatly. I am really grateful. Ephasion and Lu Sweki did not dare to be rude, returned the greeting together. Ephasion smiled and said, Shangguan teacher uncle is too polite. Qing Yun, Tian Yin, and Funxiang Valley are originally a good faction family. Helping out righteously is also our duty. But looking at teacher uncle's complexion, you do not look well. Not sure what happened last night. Speaking, he looked at Shangguan Su, his lips revealing an amiable smile, indescribably benevolent and peaceful, exactly the look of a Buddhist monk. Shangguan Su snorted in his heart, but his face revealed a grateful smile, said, it is not considered a big matter. I met a few little thieves and wasted some time. That's all. But since the matter here is more or less settled, our valley really do not dare to trouble both of you again. Please return to the mountain. If there is a chance in the future, I will definitely pay a visit with Valley Master Yin Senior Brother. Fa Xiong and Lu Sweki looked at each other. Both of them were quick-witted people. How would they believe Shangguan Su's story of meeting a few thieves? In this world, the thieves who could rob Shangguan Su most likely had not even been born yet. Just that even though they knew Shangguan Su had the intention to shirk, but after all they could not directly expose him, both of them could only bow and nodded in agreement. Shangguan Su said a few more polite words and then left. Watching his figure disappearing in the clouds, Lu Sweki suddenly said, he is such a thoughtful person. Fa Xiong smiled and said, yes. I wonder what exactly Shangguan teacher uncle did last night. Halfway through his words, he suddenly stopped. Lu Sweki's face, other than indifference, there was no trace of smile. At first glance, this white-attired lady was gazing afar. Her bright eyes, complicated and hazy, her thoughts seemed much heavier than Shangguan Su. What was she thinking about? Fa Xiong quietly chanted, did not say anything else. Hilltop. Xiao Bai supported ghostly, looked towards the 7-mile cave. At the last 2 figures also flew up to the sky and gradually disappeared. They have left. Xiao Bai smiled and said. Ghostly quietly looked away from the clouds, was silent for a moment, said, let's go down. Xiao Bai nodded, but looked at Ghostly's body, gently said, why don't we take a rest first? Your wound is bleeding so much again. Ghostly shook his head, said, my body is fine. Finding the great shaman is more important. After speaking, he was the first to stand up. ZZ, ZZ. A familiar scream was heard beside him. A gray figure jumped out from the side. With 2 or 3 jumps, it landed on Ghostly's shoulder. although the figure's movements were still shaky, but the monkey who had finally awoken from his drunken stupor was clearly in good spirits, in a good mood, grinning. Chapter 247. Xiaobai also stood up, walked over to Ghostly, glared at Xiao Hui, said, "What are you laughing at? Last night your stupid master almost died. Do you know that?" A low, angry growl. It was Xiao Hui who was on Ghostly's shoulder, baring its teeth in a furious and ferocious manner, baring its sharp teeth, looking around, its two monkey fists clenched, waving up and down, looking like it was looking for someone to fight. Xiaobai snorted, said, "Don't pretend, you're too late." The monkey Xiao Hui's eyeballs looked up, rolled its eyes at Xiaobai, called out twice, shrunk its body, and pulled Ghostly's clothes, with an indifferent look, only sticking to its master. Ghostly patted its head, did not say anything, and continued down the mountain. Xiao Hui turned its head, very pleased with itself, stuck its tongue out at Xiaobai, and made a face. Xiaobai smiled bitterly, shook her head and sighed, followed up, quietly muttering, "These days, even monkeys have such character." They walked into the 7-mile cave. The Meow people they met again, all of their eyes were filled with resentment. Some of them had seen Ghost Li's blood-soaked, demon-like appearance last night. Their faces revealed a frightened expression. Xiaobai saw that Ghostly was having a hard time walking, hurried a few steps forward to support him. When Ghostly was about to struggle free, she quietly said, "I'm afraid these Meow people will not let us see the great shaman." Ghostly was not used to being supported by Xiaobai, was about to struggle free and walk alone, but after hearing Xiaobai's words, he was stunned for a moment, said, "What is it?" Xiaobai glanced ahead. Ghostly followed her gaze. The two of them were walking towards the Meow altar, but at the foot of the mountain, several Meow burly men were gathered, guarding the only path up the mountain. And when they saw the two outsiders walking over, almost all of them looked like they were facing a great enemy. Some of the warriors had already raised their swords and spears, pointed at Ghostly and Xiaobai. Ghostly was silent, but his footsteps did not stop, continued to walk towards the crowd. Xiaobai beside him glanced at him and said, "If they don't let us go up, what do we do?" Ghostly did not speak. Xiao Hui, who was lying on Ghostly's shoulder, was currently looking around with a shocked expression. It clearly did not understand why this place had been turned upside down after just one night of sleep. They walked nearer, and, as Xiaobai expected, none of the Meow warriors retreated or evaded. Each of their eyes filled with enmity, gathered on the path towards the altar, their weapons all unsheathed, pointed at the two of them. The corner of Ghostly's mouth twitched. A trace of irritation flashed past his eyes. Just that at this moment, he finally knew that it was not the time to be forceful. Dealing with these Meow warriors was still all right, but once the Meow people were injured, even if the great shaman was safe and sound, most likely he would not be able to treat Bai Yao for himself. He took a deep breath and said in a low voice, "We wish to see the Grand Wizard," not knowing if it was because they did not understand his words or they did not intend to bother. The Meow soldiers' expressions did not even change. At this moment, even Little White was frowning, feeling very troubled. And at this moment, behind the crowd, suddenly the Meow tribe leader Tu Magu's voice was heard. "The great shaman is seriously injured and cannot meet guests. It's better for all of you to leave." The crowd opened up a path. Tu Magu unhurriedly walked out from behind. Looking at his cold face, his clothes still stained with blood. Evidently, he did not have an easy time last night. Right now, his expression towards Ghost Li and Little White was already poles apart from yesterday. Ghostly was silent for a while, said, "Is the great shaman all right?" Tu Magu sneered and said, "Thanks to both of you, he is still alive." Ghostly heaved a sigh of relief, but Little White could not bear to listen anymore. Indifferently said, "The great shaman is injured, but it has nothing to do with the both of us. Tribe leader, even if you are angry, you cannot take it out on us." Tu Magu had been suppressing a bellyful of anger since last night. The reason why he was still speaking to these two outsiders was because they did not kill the Meow people last night, and Ghostly even saved a child. But right now, hearing Little White's cold words, immediately his anger soared, his brows raised, and was about to blow up. Suddenly, hurried footsteps were heard from behind the crowd. It was a meow person who looked like a young shaman who ran down from the mountain, assessed ghostly and the rest, and then whispered a few words into Tumagu's ear. Tumagu was obviously stunned for a moment. In disbelief, asked again in meow language. That young shaman nodded his head affirmatively. Tumagu heaved a long sigh, turned around and said, "The great shaman wants to see all of you. All of you follow this shaman up." Ghostly and Little White were stunned. Little White frowned, thinking how did the great shaman know that they were at the foot of the mountain? Ghostly instead felt a wave of joy in his heart, since the great shaman was willing to see them. Most likely he was also willing to treat Baiyao. They followed this young shaman, passed through the crowd, and walked up the mountain. The Meow people's eyes revealed puzzlement and anger, but obviously the great shaman still had his authority. No one came out to stop them. Instead, after they had left for a while, some Meow people started to babble to Tumagu, and then many Meow people started to chime in. Most likely they were unwilling to see the evil outsiders enter the altar again. Tumagu loudly berated a few times, and at the same time looked towards the altar. The Meow people's voices then gradually quietened down. Ghostly and Little White followed the shaman who was leading the way, walked up to the platform in front of the altar. Both of them noticed at the same time, at the front of the platform, the ground, which was originally made of huge rocks, cracked into numerous fine cracks, extending out in all directions from where the great shaman stood last night, and the rocks in the very middle were even shattered into pieces. Both of them looked at each other. Little White's expression did not change, but Ghost Lee's heart was slightly shaken. The southern border was located at the border and had never entered the Central Plains cultivation sect's eyes. Not only the good sects looked down on this place, even the evil sect also looked down on this place. Just at this time they had witnessed it with their own eyes. The southern border witchcraft was unfathomable. It really could not be belittled. Hoo-hoo-loo-loo. The shaman ahead was using a strange meow language to urge them. Ghostly and Little White turned around and walked over. The altar was deep. The darkness inside was like an endless tunnel, swallowing their figures in. Far away from the southern border, Meow settlement south of the 7-mile cave, that stretch of towering, precipitous, undulating mountain range, was the 10,000 great mountains that the southern border people's countenance changed upon hearing of. Over here, there seemed to be no sunlight all year round, dark clouds lingering, black wind howling. Occasionally, there would be daring hunters who went hunting in the mountains during the years of famine, but they never returned. And among the 5 tribes of the southern border, since a long time ago, there was a warning passed down by the ancestors that no one was allowed to enter that stretch of evil mountain range, because there was the demon king that all of the southern border people feared and his terrifying barbarian subordinates. For so many years, this common warning had been passed down from generation to generation, had been passed down by the southern border 5 tribes. With the passing of time, in the 10,000 great mountains shrouded in black clouds, it became even more mysterious. And the only passage that led to that terrifying, mysterious world, right now, was still quietly existing at the foot of the mountain. In the eerie cave, strange screams were heard from time to time, making one's teeth sore and body cold. In the southern border legend, that was the enraged roar of the mysterious and terrifying Demon King. The evil shaman dressed in black, like a ghost, suddenly appeared beside this cave, even though it was already daybreak, but his surroundings still seemed to be shrouded in darkness. Behind him, a huge beast slowly appeared, for feet on the ground, its protruding claws extremely sharp. Its back arched, on its long and thick neck was a huge head. At first glance one would think that it was the mythical dragon of the Central Plains, but after a closer look, there were still differences. The huge beast had a huge bloody mouth, its teeth extremely sharp. A pair of eyes shot out ominous glints from time to time, vigilantly looking around, as if it was choosing someone to swallow. The evil shaman in front of this huge beast was only about 1/3 of its height. But for some reason, this evil dragon was extremely respectful towards this black-attired man. The evil shaman seemed to be the same as the evil dragon beside him, maintaining his vigilance. Right now, he was also carefully looking around. After making sure that no one was following them, He then turned and nodded to the evil dragon, said, "Go back." The evil dragon made a muffled sound deep in its throat, probably in agreement, but this sound was like a roar, deafening. The evil shaman was obviously used to the evil dragon's reaction. The next moment, his figure flashed and disappeared into the cave, blending into the darkness. And the evil dragon's body was too huge, obviously unable to enter the cave. Looking at it, it seemed to be about to move. Suddenly its body stopped and suddenly stopped. A loud but deep roar. The ferocious evil dragon slowly turned over. Something seemed to have startled the sensitive dragon. At this moment, it had a fierce look on its face as it looked around once again. At the same time, its nose above its mouth kept expanding and contracting. It was obvious that it had a keen sense of smell and was sniffing the air. Just that the surroundings were quiet. Nothing happened, and after the evil dragon sniffed for a while, it also did not discover anything. The evil dragon seemed to be a little confused, but after a long time, it finally decided to give up. It turned around again, roared in a low voice, and exerted force on its forelegs. With a loud bang, this giant beast actually directly charged towards the towering and precipitous mountain range. Its figure was vigorous, its huge legs sprinting. The claws on its feet dug deeply into the rocks and soil, like steel nails deeply embedded, stabilizing its body. It ran like it was flying on the mountain ridge. In a blink, it had charged up to a very high peak, gradually disappearing into a patch of dark clouds. And at that sinister cave, after a long time, behind a clump of flowers and grasses, suddenly a long sigh was heard, as if nervous for a long time, then relaxed. The next moment, Jean Pinger's light yellow figure floated out from the flowers and grasses, landed outside that dark cave. She faced that dark cave. Her face gradually revealed a contemplative expression. After a long time, seemed to have made a decision. Clenched her teeth, her figure wavered, floated into that cave, towards that mysterious world, quietly entered. Chapter 248. 7 Mile Cave, Meow Altar. Last night's battle did not seem to affect the quiet atmosphere here. Under the young shaman's lead, Ghostly and Xiao Bai quietly walked in the altar. Xiao Hui, who was crouching on Ghostly's shoulder, seemed to have quietened down, as if the solemn atmosphere had also made it well behaved. Passing through the long tunnel, they came to the stone house deep inside the altar. The young shaman nodded slightly, did not speak to them, turned and left. The next moment disappeared into the darkness. Only the two of them were left. Ghostly and Xiao Bai looked at each other. Ghostly indifferently said, "Let's go in." Xiao Bai nodded in agreement. Both of them walked in together. The house was still very dim. A fire was still burning deep ahead. In front of the fire, a stooped figure was still sitting with his back facing them. In this familiar scene, in a trance, what happened last night seemed unreal. Perhaps it was just a dream. A light cough sounded from the old man's body. Under the illumination of the firelight, his back trembled violently, breaking the silence here and bringing everyone back to reality. "You all are here," the great shaman, after he stopped coughing, using a hoarse voice, slowly said, "Come over." Ghostly and Xiao Bai walked behind him, quietly sat down in front of this frail old man. For some reason, both of them did not know what to say. The great shaman seemed to sigh softly, said, "Just now my tribesmen were rude to you all. Don't take it to heart." Ghostly nodded slightly, said, "We dare not." The great shaman coughed twice again, became silent, and did not say anything more. Ghostly and Xiao Bai could only wait patiently. Unexpectedly, this wait was half a day. That great shaman seemed to be asleep, motionless, and did not react at all. Ghostly was getting more and more anxious. Firstly, he did not know what this great shaman was thinking. Secondly, the sudden turmoil last night made him feel bitter regret for the rest of his life. If by any chance he delayed Bai Yao, because of him, even 100 deaths would not be enough to atone for it. Right now, after waiting for a long time, the great shaman still did not seem to speak. Xiao Bai was still patient and not at all anxious, but Xiao Hui was already impatient. The monkey was playful by nature. Right now, it could not stand the solemn atmosphere. It grabbed here and there, slid here and there, quietly slid down from Ghostly's body. Ghost Lee's heart was burning with anxiety. He really did not wish to delay any longer. Immediately spoke, "Senior, the matter that I request from you." Before he could finish the word matter, the great shaman suddenly interrupted. "Young man, let me tell you a story." Ghostly was startled. He glanced at Xiao by beside him, only to see her also frowning a little, her eyes filled with confusion. Evidently, she did not know what this old fellow was thinking. But right now, he was after all asking for help. Ghostly could only sigh in his heart, endured the impatient anxiety in his heart, said patiently, "Senior, please speak." The great shaman's hoarse voice in the depths of this dark altar faintly resounded, as if after hundreds and thousands of years, at this moment again quietly turning back. Our southern border is located in the south of the vast divine continent, has never been as prosperous as the Central Plains, but we have our own unique origins. Ghostly nodded silently. Southern border's unique customs were indeed different from Central Plains. Now everyone in the world knows, in our southern border, there are a total of 5 tribes living side by side, living together on this piece of land. But in actual fact, a long, long time ago, Miao Li Zhuang, two Mountain 5 tribes, were actually the same ancient tribe called Shaman tribe. Ghostly and Xiao Bai were stunned. Not to mention, Ghostly had never heard of these things before. Even Xiao Bai did not have any impression. The great shaman's back figure was refracted into a slightly distorted shadow by the blazing flames, reflected on the ground. In his voice, at the same time, the crackling sounds of firewood bursting in the flames, indistinctly carrying the vicissitudes of the past. The tribe legend. In the ancient times, the ancient shaman tribe managed the southern border. Powerful and powerful, every generation of the tribe produced people with profound shaman power. Among them, the shaman lady who served the shaman deity in every generation. Her shaman skills were the most powerful. The so-called shaman lady was a virgin girl with the highest spiritual power, selected from every generation of the ancient shaman tribe to serve the shaman deity in the altar, delve into shaman skills, and lead the entire shaman tribe. This kind of days went on for many years, many years. Ghostly and Xiao Bai both raised their heads slightly. They were both intelligent people. Right now, they knew the crux of what the great shaman said was about to come out, and Xiao Hui at this moment had already stealthily snuck off somewhere in the darkness. But on the 3rd year of the ancient shaman tribe's 11th generation shaman lady succeeding the throne in the 10,000 great mountains of the southern border, suddenly a change happened. The great shaman's voice was still hoarse, but his tone quietly rose, as if the indistinct agitation in his heart was slowly leaking out. In the 10,000 great mountains, a monster known as the beast deity. No one knew where that monster came from. It seemed like he just appeared out of thin air in the dangerous and ferocious 10,000 great mountains. In the beginning, no one noticed the existence of that monster, but gradually, the ancestors of the shaman tribe felt the change. Although the undulating mountains of the 10,000 great mountains were treacherous, but the forests were lush, the animals numerous, the skilled hunters of the shaman tribe could always enter and hunt. But from that time onwards, in the 10,000 great mountains, a vicious miasma was suddenly born. When one inhaled a breath, the entire body would fester and die. What was even more strange was the originally normal wild beasts also started to undergo strange changes. Some turned into beast-headed humanoid monsters, extremely savage, killed on sight, dismembered the corpses and ate them. It made one's hair stand on end. In the shaman tribe, for a moment, everyone was in a state of panic. Ghostly and Xiao Bai could not help but look at each other again. What the great shaman said was indeed strange, unheard of. The great shaman paused for a while, as if immersed in that ancient history. After a while, slowly continued. At that time, the shaman lady gathered the shaman leaders of the tribe for a discussion and finally sent 3 shamans to lead a team of elite warriors to the 10,000 great mountains to investigate, to see what exactly happened, to make the poisonous miasma suddenly appear in the mountains, the animals mutate. But on the 10th day after the team entered the mountains, only the leader with the strongest shaman power managed to escape. and his entire body festered. Even under the shaman lady's full treatment, it was still ineffective. In the end, he only said the words beast deity on his deathbed, and died like that. Beast deity, Ghostly and Xiao Bai both slowly recited this name in their hearts. From that time onwards, the shaman tribe ancestors finally knew a monster appeared in the 10,000 Great Mountains. Later on, after many investigations and sacrificing the lives of many brave warriors, they gradually found out that this monster had suddenly appeared in the 100,000 mountains. He had an unimaginably strange ability. Under his demonic magic, the originally lush mountains became barren. The clear rivers were filled with venom, and the poisonous miasma was everywhere. And the original various animals in the forest were also turned into monsters by his evil powers, turned into different kinds of bear people, tiger people, leopard people, werewolves, etc. monsters, savage man-eating, extremely terrifying. Ghostly's lips suddenly twitched, interrupted. Among them, is there a kind of fishman? The great shaman's figure shook, was silent for a moment, as if recalling something, and then slowly nodded, said, "That's right, according to the tribe's legend, those savage barbarians in the 10,000 Great Mountains, there is indeed such a kind of fishman. Why, don't tell me you." Ghostly was silent for a moment, finally still said, "That's right, I once saw such a fishman monster in the western Great Marsh." The great shaman's body shook greatly, finally could not bear it, abruptly turned his head, the fire shone on his wrinkles, like deep growth rings carved by the years, and his voice, right now, was already hoarse. You actually really saw those monsters?" Ghostly was silent but certain, nodded his head. The great shaman's face turned pale, stammered, "Appeared, finally appeared. Heaven's will. Heaven's will. But why would they appear in the west? The entrance to the 10,000 Great Mountains. Isn't it guarded by the cultivating Funxiang Valley?" His old face, at times terrified, at times confused, his expression changed incessantly. He seemed to be in a trance. Ghostly stretched out his hand, gently patted the old man's shoulder. The great shaman's body shook, as if suddenly awakened, looked at Ghostly, his expression gradually calmed down, and then again turned his head, facing the fire. "I better continue. Anyway, if it is heaven's will, we mortals are also powerless." His voice seemed to have an additional desolation. After knowing about the evil beast, the shaman tribe never had a day of peace again. And as time went on, the various monsters under the evil beast started to gradually come out of the 10,000 Great Mountains. Just like that, news of their tribesmen being killed came from everywhere, and the number increased. It really reached a state of panic. Until the end, the ordinary shaman tribe people even started to abandon their homes, recklessly migrated to the north. It looked like if this continued, the entire shaman tribe would be destroyed. That generation of shaman lady originally wanted to find out more about this monster and then discuss how to get rid of this monster. Chapter 249. But at that time, the shaman tribe was furious. The situation was really at its most critical moment. She finally decided to gather all of the shaman tribe shamans and warriors together to fight against this unparalleled evil, to fight it to the death, to save the shaman tribe. Unexpectedly, on that night when the shaman lady made this decision, the evil beast actually led his numerous evil demons, suddenly attacked from the 10,000 Great Mountains, directly towards the ancient shaman tribe altar. The shaman tribe altar is the place where the shaman tribe worshipped the shaman deity, has always been the lifeline of the tribe, sacred and inviolable. That night, it can be said that all of the shaman tribe, regardless male or female, even the slightly older children, all charged into the battlefield, fought with those ferocious evil demons to the death. The great shaman's voice, at this point, gently stopped, and Ghostly and Xiao Bai held their breaths. That ancient, bloody massacre seemed to be in the surrounding darkness, and the great shaman's bleak words, once again, quietly surfaced. That fierce battle is not something we can imagine. What our Miao tribe ancestors have passed down from generation to generation is only the scales and claws that describe that battle. Anyway, After blood stained the entire ground beneath their feet, after countless of shaman tribe warriors sacrificed their bodies to perish together with the evil demons, the evil beast finally still led some evil demons, charged into the shaman goddess's last defense, the shaman altar. And outside the altar, the massacre was still going on. Just that the great shaman finally started to protect his people, and that shaman lady was publicly acknowledged as the most powerful shaman in history. After that earth-shattering battle, the evil beast and his few valiant evil demons were finally trapped by the shaman lady in the altar using the 8 savage inferno formation passed down by the ancient shaman god. What? Ghostly and Xiao Bai suddenly exclaimed at the same time. The great shaman looked back at them strangely, said, 8 savage inferno formation, what is it? Ghostly and Xiao Bai looked at each other. After a moment of silence, said, this name is rather strange. The great shaman sighed and said, this formation is passed down by the ancient shaman deity, using the rare treasure Inferno Mirror to activate. Its power is extremely strong. Even the demon beasts with exceedingly high evil powers were also trapped in this formation. The morale of the people of the shaman tribe was greatly boosted, while the morale of the demons was in chaos. Finally, they were gradually beaten back. Just that although the 8 savage inferno formation had boundless mana, but the demonic powers of the beast demon were really not to be underestimated. Under the burning of the 8 savage inferno dragon day and night, although seriously injured but still survived and continued to confront the shaman goddess. At that time in the entire altar, because the formation's power was too strong, the other shamans could not go near to help. Only the shaman lady herself supported this huge formation with her own shaman power. And just like that, after 3 days and 3 nights, when the entire shaman tribe was almost going crazy, that beast actually broke out of the formation. But although the beast escaped, but it was already dying from the burning of the formation, did not dare to stay any longer, directly flew back to its nest in the 10,000 Great Mountains. And when the crowd rushed to the altar, the shaman lady was already exhausted, so tired that she was like a dried-up lamp. Just that shaman lady was really an admirable figure. Just a day's rest, her vitality was greatly injured, and she decided to enter the 10,000 Great Mountains alone to eliminate that beast. Because if that beast recovered, I'm afraid the end of the shaman tribe would really come. Xiao Bai sighed softly, said, this shaman lady is really a heroine among women, Bodhisattva's heart, so selfless for others. The great shaman indifferently said, in our southern border, we do not believe in Bodhisattva. Xiao Bai smiled and did not speak. The great shaman continued, at that time among the shaman tribe, no one agreed with the shaman lady's actions. Everyone knew that once she went, most likely she would never return. But the shaman lady was determined and eventually still went. Just that accompanying her were 7 of the tribe's bravest warriors. The 8 of them entered the extremely dangerous 10,000 Great Mountains like that. Along the way, they cut their way through brambles and thorns, not knowing how many monsters they killed. Finally, on the 6th day, they came to the ancient cave where the beast lived. The shaman lady at this moment made an unexpected decision. She let the other 7 wait outside the cave. Only she entered the cave. The 7 warriors naturally were unwilling, but the shaman lady's determination was extremely firm and said that even if they went in, it would not help and instead would drag her down. In the end, the 7 warriors could only agree. After the shaman lady entered the cave, there was no more news. The 7 warriors waited outside the cave for 2 whole days and 2 nights. Finally, 2 of them could not bear it and wanted to rush into the cave to look for the shaman lady, but the other 5 thought that they should continue to wait and listen to the shaman lady's orders. Between the 7 warriors, they quarreled, and in the end, the 2 warriors still entered the cave, and from then on, there was no more news. Just like that, until the 5th day, when the remaining 5 warriors gradually lost their confidence. The shaman lady miraculously staggered out of the cave. At that time, she looked as if she had completely lost blood, her face frighteningly pale. But in their joy, the 5 warriors did not notice this. The shaman lady summoned the 5 warriors to her side, gave each of them a shining weapon filled with strange shaman power, and told them that these 5 sacred weapons were refined from the beast's body after she killed it. But the demon beast was a peerless monster formed from the most vicious and vicious energy in the world. Although its body was destroyed, its soul did not dissipate. The 5 warriors turned pale with fright. The shaman lady said again, "As long as these 5 sacred weapons did not return to this ancient cave, the demon beast would never be able to revive." After speaking, her body trembled continuously. Suddenly, blood flowed out from her 7 orifices. The 5 warriors were shocked. The shaman lady used the last of her strength, exhorted them, for the entire shaman tribe, to guard these 5 sacred weapons forever. Must not let the demon beast revive. If not, it would be the end of the shaman tribe in the world. And she herself would guard outside this ancient cave forever, using her own soul to suppress all the evildoers, locking them in the ancient cave. After reluctantly saying these, the shaman lady could not hold on any longer, stood up and passed away. And the next moment, her body faced the depths of the ancient cave, turned into a stone statue. The great shaman's voice slowly faded. In the firelight, everyone's expression was strange, an indescribable expression. After a long time, Xiaobai heaved a long sigh, said, "What a great shaman lady! But great shaman, you told us this story for what?" The great shaman's back figure, as if bent by an invisible burden, looked exceptionally desolate. He did not answer Xiao Bai's question, instead continued. After the 5 warriors wept bitterly and grieved, they returned to the shaman tribe. Although the shaman lady unfortunately died, but the demon beast, this unprecedented enemy of the shaman tribe, was finally suppressed in that ancient cave. The shaman tribe commoners, other than sorrow, also had some joy and rejoiced. Just that, at this time, the 5 warriors whose reputations had soared because of their return from slaying the demon, because of fighting for the leader position of the shaman tribe, they fought amongst themselves. The most unfortunate thing was every generation of shaman lady was appointed by the previous generation of shaman lady, and this generation of shaman lady did not leave any instructions, and the 5 warriors at that time all forgot to ask this question. And so, the once prosperous shaman tribe, under the quarrel of the 5 warriors, gradually split up, and the commoners each supported one of them. In the end, gradually split into the current southern border Miao, Li Zhuang 2, Gao Mountain 5 tribes, and those 5 crucial sacred weapons were each controlled by the 5 tribes. When this ancient but soul-stirring story finally came to an end, Ghostly inhaled deeply, looked at the great shaman's back, slowly said, "Senior, you have said so much. Don't tell me you want me to help find the Miao tribe's sacred weapons." Chapter 250. The great shaman was silent for a moment, said, "Yes." Ghostly was silent. The great shaman slowly said, "This sacred weapon concerns the lives and deaths of the southern border commoners. I only hope that you can help our southern border commoners." Ghostly's eyes twitched, said, "The southern border 5 tribes, the population is innumerable. Why do you need to seek help from an outsider?" The great shaman shook his head, his voice desolate, said, "Ever since the 5 tribes split, shaman skills declined day by day. Now we can't find a decent talent able to take up this mission. You asked me to recall the soul of that friend of yours. I promised you, just that the situation you mentioned is different from the past situation in the southern border. I'm also not confident, but I will try my best. Tomorrow morning, I will accompany you all to Central Plains." Ghost Li and Xiao Bai were stunned, did not expect the great shaman to be in such a rush. Ghost Li, for Bai Yao, was not even afraid of death. Why would he care about taking the risk to snatch some legendary sacred weapon? Just that although he was delighted, but he could see that the great shaman was seriously injured, immediately said, "Senior, you fought last night. Don't you want to rest for a few days first?" The great shaman quietly sighed, said, "I don't have much time left before that. I will do my best for you. Only hope that you can look at this dying old man's face. For the countless commoners of the southern border, lend a hand." Ghostly was silent. Actually, how could he not see the great shaman's frail body? But he did not expect it to be to this extent. And Xiao Bai suddenly said, "Great shaman, you said just now, the 5 sacred weapons must be returned to the ancient cave together. Then that demon beast could be revived, is it?" The great shaman nodded and said, "That's right." Xiao Bai said, "Since that's the case, even if the Miao tribe lost 1 sacred weapon, there are still the other 4. You don't have to be too anxious." "2, it is 2." The great shaman suddenly interrupted. After speaking, a bout of violent coughing came from his mouth again. Xiao Bai was stunned, said, "What?" The great shaman waited until his coughing finally subsided, sighed, and said, "On top of our tribe's sacred weapon Black Staff, there's another sacred weapon, Jade Bone, that was snatched from the Li tribe 200 years ago by our Miao tribe." Xiao Bai made no sound, her expression strange, and did not speak. The great shaman was silent for a moment, said, "Actually, 200 years ago, we had already sensed that something was not right, secretly received news that Zhuang, Tu, Gao mountain these 3 tribes' sacred weapons, in these few hundred years, suddenly, inexplicably, and very strangely lost. At that time, only our Miao tribe and Li tribe still had the sacred weapons in our hands. At that time, among the 5 tribes, only our Miao tribe altar shaman spell still had some power. So we snatched the sacred weapon Jade Bone from the Li tribe and safeguarded it in our altar, hoping to be safe, didn't expect in the end it was still. Ghostly and Xiao Bai did not speak. Snatching other people's sacred weapon, this kind of thing, after all, was not very glorious. The great shaman also knew this, did not wish to speak more on this, immediately turned and looked at Ghostly, said, "So the situation now is really extremely critical. The 5 sacred weapons are all lost. Maybe it was that evil beast doing. And last night that Li tribe sorcerer spell was basically the demon beast black fire sorcery. I am really worried." Before he finished his words, he was already coughing. His voice was hoarse and hoarse. Ghostly breathed deeply, slowly said, "I promise you." The great shaman was overjoyed, nodded repeatedly, said, Thank you very much." Xiao Bai sat beside, suddenly said, "Great shaman, that shaman lady at that time, what was her name? I really admire her very much." The great shaman's countenance changed, sighed, slowly straightened his body. A reverent expression also surfaced on his face, slowly said, "That lady was called Ling Long." The darkness without daylight, the intertwining tall black trees, the bones of humans and beasts everywhere in the forest, and the phosphorescence flickering between the eerie white bones. These were what Jean Pinger was facing right now. Ever since she tracked the evil shaman, entered the mysterious and eerie world of the 10,000 Great Mountains, after trekking through 2 layers of precipitous mountain ranges, entered a vast black forest, and what presented before her was this scene. This was her 3rd day in the Black Forest. The seemingly endless darkness ahead, like it had solidified and did not move, Jean Pinger's charming face could not help but showed faint anxiety. She took a step forward, but there was a soft sound under her feet. She looked down and saw a white human skull rolling to the side on the ground. She wondered how long it had been since he died here. Jean Pinger sighed, used her feet to gently push, sweeping the skull to one side. Even though she was mentally prepared before entering the 10,000 Great Mountains, but Jean Pinger still did not expect this place to be so strange and sinister. Not to mention the highly toxic miasma everywhere, a little carelessness, and one could die a violent death. Along the way, she met quite a number of strange beasts that she had never heard of before. To say they were strange beasts actually was not appropriate. Most of these things were mutated from some ferocious beasts, like a combination of tiger and leopard, boar and bear, etc., but they did not look like those intelligent strange tribes like the human fish that she had seen before. But although these strange beasts were ferocious, it was only in comparison to ordinary people. To Jean Pinger, who was from the evil sect Yuan's sect, it was not difficult to deal with. Therefore, the journey was still considered easy for her, just that the poisonous miasma everywhere made her on tenterhooks every day, not daring to relax for even a moment. And the evil shaman that she was pursuing from afar seemed like he did not expect someone to follow him into the 10,000 Great Mountains. So until now, Jean Pinger had not lost him, just that evil dragon beside the evil shaman really gave Jean Pinger a headache. No matter how she tried to conceal herself, whenever she went near the evil shaman, that extremely sensitive dragon would almost always be on alert. After a few times, Jean Pinger no longer dared to go near the evil shaman. Right now, Jean Pinger, using He Huan's secret tracking skill, was chasing the evil shaman from afar, and ever since they entered the Black Forest, the evil shaman had never rested for 3 days, always moving at the same speed in the forest. Jean Pinger's skills were rather high. 3 days of nonstop to her. She could still hold on, but no matter what she would feel tired, and that evil shaman ahead of her seemed to not be human, always moving at the same speed. The phosphorescence flickering in the Black Forest, like the flickering light in the darkness, and also like the silent eyes in the underworld, watching this intruding girl. Suddenly, a roar was heard in the darkness. A boar-head and bare-body strange beast suddenly dashed out from the side, pounced towards Jean Pinger. Jean Pinger frowned. Her body flew up. Her white hand waved down in the air. A brilliant purple light flashed again and again in the darkness. Purple light blade. The strange beast dashed past where Jean Pinger was standing and dashed for a few steps. Suddenly it made a strange long howl. Its entire body at the same time made a muffled sound. A sound, blood splattered everywhere. This strange beast split into two from the middle, fell to the ground, and after twitching twice, it stopped moving. The blood that flowed out under the dim phosphorescence in the Black Forest gradually seeped into the ground, turning into a deep color. Before waiting for Jean Pinger to land, in the darkness ahead, suddenly innumerable beasts roared. Instantly the original peace was broken, like hundreds of beasts howling to the sky, rose and fell in the darkness. The next moment, from behind those flickering phosphorescent lights, pairs and pairs of big or small eyes appeared, glinting fiercely in the darkness. Jean Pinger breathed deeply. Her face seemed to turn pale. Following a long howl, suddenly like a huge river crashing down, galloping footsteps pierced the silence of the darkness, gradually spreading, surrounding Jean Pinger in the middle. Oh! In that instant, innumerable strange beasts charged out from the darkness, pouncing towards that frail body. Jean Pinger's figure floated, dodging left and right in the horde of beasts. At the same time, her hands flashed with purple light. Each time she waved, a strange beast howled and died. However, there were too many beasts that suddenly appeared. In just a short while, they had squeezed so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through. Jean Pinger did not even have a place to stand. In the end, she was already flying on the backs of all kinds of strange beasts. In a short while, the number of beasts that died under Jean Pinger's purple light blade had already exceeded 20, but Jean Pinger's trousers were also torn by the beasts. And in the distant darkness, there seemed to be endless beasts surging out. She really did not know where did so many beasts come from in this Black Forest. Jean Pinger pursed her lips, knew she could not tangle with these beasts. Her right foot stretched down, tapped on the back of a tiger-head leopard-bodied beast. Her entire body leapt up, flew up. Chapter 251. Originally, Jean Pinger's intention was not willing to fly out of the Black Forest. Firstly, it would expose the target, and there seemed to be poisonous miasma above the forest. Secondly, and more importantly, after flying out of the forest to pursue the evil shaman ahead, it would be even more difficult. Just that at this moment, she could not care so much. Her body flew straight up. Although the beasts on the ground were ferocious, but they did not seem to be able to fly. Innumerable beasts squeezed on the ground, roaring, extremely ferocious. It was really terrifying. Just when Jean Pinger was about to reach the top of the tall trees, suddenly a strange sound was heard. The densely intertwined black trees. Suddenly all seemed to come alive. Black shadows flickered. Innumerable black shadows pounced down from above, mixed with a thick stench. Most likely, there was also poison. Jean Pinger, although shocked, but she did not panic. Her body stopped abruptly in the air, where the purple light flashed. Immediately, a purple halo appeared above her head. The next moment, those black shadows came down from the sky, touching this purple light. Sounds of cracking were heard. In an instant, a dozen black shadows shattered, scattered in all directions. Looking from afar, It was the black tree branches, just that in the air. There was also a stench of black juice. Although Jean Pinger blocked the strange tree descending from the sky, but her body was still struck down, the innumerable beasts on the ground immediately became excited, roared and howled. Many even leapt up with all their might, pouncing towards Jean Pinger's body. Jean Pinger's face was pale. Her hands waved continuously. The purple lights surged. In that instant, it moved from the top of her head to the bottom of her body. Before her body landed on the ground, a hair-raising sound was already heard. Within the purple light area, several strange beasts' bodies exploded. Blood splattered everywhere. Even Jean Pinger's body was dyed red. Just that this blood stench seemed to agitate the surrounding beasts. In a blink, countless more beasts pounced over. Jean Pinger's forehead was already beaded with sweat. Without hesitation, the purple light blade danced and blocked a group of beasts. Her body floated up, using all her strength to fly forward. Right now, Jean Pinger's situation was extremely dangerous. Countless ferocious beasts pursuing below, endless strange trees obstructing above. She could not go up or down, could only use all her strength to fly forward in the middle of the forest. In the black forest, roars of beasts were already everywhere. Reverberating far away, the black wind howled, a scene of hell on earth. Avoiding the sharp claws of the beasts that leapt into the air, Jean Pinger chopped an entire black tree that was blocking her way and flew past it. What appeared in front of her were even more monsters and endless demon-like black trees. Just like that, they fought and ran forward. After an unknown amount of time, just as Jean Pinger felt that she was gradually losing strength, suddenly, the originally dark front actually revealed a glimmer of light. Jean Pinger was overjoyed. Her spirits lifted. The purple light blade exploded, chopped down a huge gray wolf that was pouncing on the ground. Her entire body flew with all her strength. The shadows danced, like demons roaring. Numerous black trees pressed down from the sky. Jean Pinger was surrounded by the purple light, killing beasts she saw along the way. Chopping down trees she saw, blood and flesh splattered. Wailing like ghosts and howling like wolves, she forcefully fought her way out of this strange and unpredictable black forest, directly slaughtering a path out. Behind her, broken branches and beast corpses were everywhere. Blood and black juice splattered everywhere. When she dashed out of the black forest, this originally alluring lady was actually covered in blood, like a blood person, indescribably hideous and terrifying. Just that, when she saw her surroundings clearly, she who was panting heavily, her countenance changed even more. Where she was at was a cliff, just a huge rock exposed outside the black forest. Below the rock, clouds drifted, the horizon light shone, as if there was a strange, colorful light flowing. Jean Pinger only took a look and knew that those colorful clouds were the most poisonous miasma. Anyone caught in it would die immediately. And right at this moment, in the black forest behind her, innumerable strange beasts' roars sounded again, just behind her. Jean Pinger clenched her teeth. The hand holding the purple light blade tightened again. Swooshing and turning around, she felt a ringing sound above her head. Almost unable to stand, even her body swayed a few times. These few days, she had not had a good rest. Today she was facing innumerable ferocious strange beasts and demonic trees. Even an Iron Man would find it extremely strenuous. She was greatly shocked. A thought flashed past in a flash. Don't tell me I'm going to die here. She couldn't help but secretly regretted. She should not have discovered the mysterious relationship between the evil shaman and Shangguan Su. Took the risk and chased in. Just at the next moment, she suddenly realized, although those beasts were still roaring and standing at her position, she could still vaguely see some beasts leaping around in the dark forest, extremely furious, but for some reason, not one of those beasts walked out of the black forest. Maybe they originally did not exist in this world, and so could only live in that strange forest. This discovery made Jean Pinger finally heave a sigh of relief, and under the light, those black demonic trees seemed to freeze, did not make any more moves to attack her. Standing on the rock, She felt the faint stench of the mountain breeze blowing from the cliff behind her. Jean Pinger's body softened, almost sat down. The wind blew her clothes. She then discovered her entire body was covered in filthy beast blood. No matter what, Jean Pinger was after all a girl. This discovery made her feel disgusted, quickly lowered her head to tidy up. Suddenly, in the black forest, a loud roar was heard, instantly suppressing the innumerable beasts' roars. Before Jean Pinger could raise her head to check, a huge black figure leapt out from the black forest, pounced towards her. Jean Pinger felt the entire sky suddenly darkened. She was enveloped by that black figure. With a cry, subconsciously used the purple light blade to block above her head. The purple light blade had just lit up when the black figure had already pounced. A huge force like toppling the mountains and overturning the seas surged over. Jean Pinger's body was sent flying. In mid-air, she had already spat out blood. Her body somersaulted in the air. After a few flips, she had already flown off the rock and landed. The mountain wind whistled. In a blink, she had disappeared. Oh! With a low roar, that black figure landed on the ground. It was that evil dragon beside the evil shaman. Right now, opened its ferocious mouth, a pair of ferocious eyes sweeping around, and those beasts in the black forest seemed to be extremely afraid of this evil dragon. No longer made any movements. All quietly ran away. The black figure swayed. The evil shaman in black unhurriedly floated out from the black forest, passed by the evil dragon, and came to the edge of the cliff. The huge, evil dragon unhurriedly followed beside him. The evil shaman leaned forward, looked down the cliff, indistinctly rippled in the colorful clouds. Evidently something had fallen down. He turned back, nodded slightly, gently patted the evil dragon's body. The evil dragon growled. The evil shaman made a cold laugh. Without even turning back, floated into the black forest. The evil dragon was about to follow, but suddenly stopped, looked at the cliff, but there was only silence. Nothing had happened. The evil dragon's fierce eyes glinted, paused for a while, and finally turned its head, ran towards its master's direction. A rustling sound was heard in the black forest, and then gradually became muffled until it disappeared. The mountain breeze blew past, swirling up the fine dust on the ground, covering the remaining blood stains, as if nothing had happened here. After a long time, suddenly a low sound, purple light, flashed beside the cliff. A figure flipped up from below the rock. It was Jean Pinger. Once she landed, she immediately panted heavily. On her originally snow-white jade face, there was blood at the corner of her mouth. Evidently her injuries were not light. On her right hand, the purple light slowly shrunk, returned into her sleeve. She looked at her left hand. She didn't know when, but there was a strangely shaped knife in her left hand. The back of the knife was sawtooth, and the shape of the knife was simple and crude. The thick and short knife body was suffused with a cold light, and two words were clearly engraved on it: kill. Jean Pinger slowly raised her head, glanced at the direction where the evil shaman and the evil dragon had left. In the black forest, it was silent. She stared for a long time, as if thinking about something. After a long time, her eyes again returned to that strange blade in her hand. In her eyes, there seemed to be a strange light quietly turning. The mountain breeze blew past, indistinctly heard her soft muttering. Kill life, monk, huh? Chapter 252. 7 Mile Cave, Meow Altar. A brand new day, even the sunlight that shone on the altar platform seemed to have a brand new taste. Ghostly and Xiao Bai stood on the platform in front of the altar halfway up the mountain, looking down at the land ravaged by the flames of war. Everywhere in the ruins, the Meow people walked in and out. Looking down from above, they looked like busy ants for their homes. Xiao Bai sighed, turned, and spoke to Ghostly, who was standing beside. You better think it through. The monsters in the 10,000 great mountains are not so easy to deal with. Ghostly's expression did not change, said, I am not even afraid of death. What else do I have to fear? Xiao Bai shrugged her shoulders, smiled bitterly, and shook her head. At this moment, a strange cry was heard beside them. Both of them turned to look. It was Xiao Hui running over, just that its running posture was a little strange. After a while, both of their eyes unexpectedly landed on the monkey's hands. Xiao Hui had one in each hand, both carrying a big bag. It was the big wine bags that the Miao people used to hold their wine. Ghostly was stunned for a long time, slowly turned to look at Xiao Bai. Xiao Bai smiled bitterly and said, "Don't look at me. I also don't know." Xiao Hui very quickly ran over. Looking at its expression, it was completely different from its master and Xiao Bai, who were preoccupied with their thoughts, obviously very excited. Grinning from ear to ear, a faint wine fragrance wafted out from the two big wine bags in its hands. The two wine bags were bulging, seemed to be filled with the Miao strong wine, very different from the few days before when there was only a small bag left. Yesterday, when Ghostly, Xiao Bai, and the great shaman were having a detailed discussion, the monkey Xiao Hui was really bored staying in the eerie altar. The monkey was lively by nature. How could it endure it? And quietly slipped out. And Ghostly at that time was preoccupied with his thoughts, surprised and delighted. He did not notice Xiao Hui had slipped away. Xiao Hui unknowingly recalled the fine wine that day. Its craving was aroused, and it slipped down the mountain to the 7-mile cave. After the fierce battle, the Miao people's homes were destroyed. It was the time of chaos, and in addition, Xiao Hui looked just like a gray monkey. Who would notice it? After a few rounds of searching, taking advantage of the chaos, the monkey actually found 2 big bags of unopened strong liquor in the ruins. Last night, Xiao Hui had hidden the 2 big bags of wine in some secret place. Early this morning, when they were about to leave, the monkey ran out and dragged the 2 big bags of wine back, obviously intending to savor it along the way. Just that right now, its master Ghost Li and Xiao Bai's expressions were strange. Xiao Hui was puzzled, opened its eyes and looked at the two of them. After a moment, Xiao Bai covered her mouth and giggled, said to Ghost Li, "Forget it. You have promised the Miao people such a big thing. Even if you take their 2 bags of wine, it is also nothing." Before she finished, she started laughing. Ghostly shook his head and slowly turned around, leaving Xiao Hui staring with its monkey eyes. Looking at Xiao Bai and then at Ghostly, it put down a wine bag and used one hand to scratch its head, looking puzzled. Deep inside the altar, the Miao tribe leader Tu Ma Gu and the great shaman sat facing each other. There was no one else around them. Tu Ma Gu was silent for a long time. The great shaman also did not speak. A suffocating atmosphere floated in the air. Finally, Tu Ma Gu's expression changed, as if he could not hold it in any longer, said, "Great shaman, your injuries are so serious. Why must you still follow these 2 Central Plains people?" The great shaman sighed softly and said, "Didn't I tell you just now?" Tu Ma Gu hatefully said, "The Li tribe snatched our sacred weapon. Even if we have to risk our lives, we must get it back. Why must we seek help from outsiders?" The great shaman shook his head and said, "You are wrong." Tu Ma Gu was stunned, said, "What?" The great shaman was silent for a moment, quietly said, "If it is really the Li tribe who snatched our sacred weapon, I don't need to be so worried. I'm afraid that. AI? Tu Ma Gu did not understand, said, "Great shaman, what do you mean?" The great shaman said, "Do you still remember that legend of the demon beast passed down from generation to generation in our Miao tribe?" Tu Ma Gu's countenance changed greatly, exclaimed, "Don't tell me that legend is true." The great shaman laughed bitterly and said, "It was originally true. That year Lady Ling Long sacrificed herself to seal the demon beast in the subdued demon cave. She ordered her descendants to never let the 5 demon beast sacred weapons return to the cave at the same time. But until today, the 5 sacred weapons have all been lost. I'm afraid this is really the omen of the demon beast's resurrection." Tu Ma Gu's expression changed. As the Miao tribe leader, naturally he knew the weight of that legend, but after a long time, he still could not help but said, "Great shaman, under such circumstances, all the more you cannot leave this place in case. With you around, our tribe will feel more at ease." The great shaman silently shook his head, said, "This old life of mine at most only have another 30 days left." Tu Ma Gu's body shook. The great shaman sighed and said, "Actually, how would I be willing to leave? If I go, I'm afraid I will die in a foreign land. But now that the southern border 5 tribes are all divided, the talents are all withering. If I'm not wrong, I'm afraid no one can handle crisis. That Central Plains young man, although is not old, but he possesses unusual skills. That black stick beside him, the baleful energy is heavy. The evil energy is great. It is something I have never seen before in my life. But the most important thing is, he looked meaningfully at Tumagu, lowered his voice, quietly said, the most important thing is the so-called Inferno Mirror, known as the essence of all fires, is with him. Tumagu was shocked, said, what? This thing is not burning incense. The great shaman signaled with his eyes. Tumagu understood and did not speak, but the shock in his eyes only increased. The great shaman unhurriedly said, that day when he met me for the first time, the divine dogstone statue behind me already had a strange sign. The sacred fire even gave a warning, and the two demon beast sacred weapons, Black Staff and Jade were both uneasy, if not for the supreme sacred weapon, Inferno Mirror, that suppressed the demon beast. There would be no other. As for how this sacred weapon leaked out from Funxiang Valley, I don't know. Tumagu was silent. The great shaman paused for a moment and continued. Afterwards, when I was speaking, I purposely revealed the origins of the Inferno Mirror. Those two were indeed shocked, especially when I mentioned the 8 Savage Inferno formation. Their expressions changed greatly. Most likely they must be closely related to this magical weapon formation. Tumagu heaved a long sigh. Obviously these words were something he had never thought of before. The great shaman indifferently said, you also know the legend passed down from generation to generation in our Miao tribe. Only this Inferno Mirror and 8 Savage Inferno formation can suppress the demon beasts. Now, not to mention that the Inferno Mirror is not in our hands. Even if we snatch it from that young man, I'm afraid no one can activate it. And also that unfathomable 8 Savage Inferno formation. Nobody knows about it. So, in such a situation, that young man is really our southern border's only hope. Even if I die in a foreign land, I will also go with him. Only hope that before I die, I can save his friend's life. Hope that on account of this, he will help our Miao tribe in the future. Tumagu's lips trembled slightly. The wrinkles on his aged face deepened. Unknowingly, a tear quietly trickled down. Facing the great shaman, he slowly crouched down, placed his head on the cold ground. The great shaman smiled. His expression also somewhat desolate, said, after I leave, all of you don't have to worry. If that young man has the heart, I believe he will send my remains back to my hometown. The matters here will all depend on you. Tumagu did not raise his head. His voice low, choked with sobs, said, great shaman, don't worry. The great shaman unhurriedly said, once I go, I will only die. Actually, it is nothing much. But you are in the southern border. The coming days are turbulent. The other 4 tribes do not know the immensity of heaven and earth. Seeing our Miao tribe losing power, I'm afraid they will inevitably hit us when we are down. And in the 10,000 great mountains, the demon beasts may revive at any time. A calamity is imminent. You shoulder the heavy burden. You have to take care of yourself. Tumagu clenched his teeth, agreed. The great shaman slowly stood up, looked around, suddenly said, if the situation is really critical in the future, although this 7-mile cave is our Miao tribe's place of residence for generations, but it is not impossible to abandon. As long as we are alive, there will be hope in the future. Tumagu's face turned pale again, slowly said, yes. The great shaman heaved a long sigh, unhurriedly walked out. When that hunchback figure, with Tumagu's support, followed by Ghostly and Xiao Bai, walked down from the altar, not many people noticed. But following the footsteps, the figure of the great shaman, who had not appeared in the 7-mile cave streets for a long time, was finally noticed by the Miao people. Following cries of surprise, more and more Miao people left their work and gathered over. The great shaman smiled, kept waving to the Miao people around him, but he did not stop, kept walking toward the exit of the 7-mile cave. Finally, the Miao people gradually felt something was wrong. In the crowd, someone started to shout loudly in Miao language, although Ghostly and Xiao Bai did not understand, but they knew what the Miao people were shouting about. Chapter 253. The great shaman's expression also seemed somewhat desolate. On his weathered face, the smile slowly disappeared. Replacing it was clearly a kind of sorrow, just that he was still silent, only waving his hand. slowly walking away. Two Magu also stopped, stood at the front of the crowd, quietly watching that hunchback figure. The cries and exclamations in the crowd had already become a din. Many were panicking, and even more had already knelt down towards that gradually disappearing old man. Ghostly, who was walking behind the great shaman, quietly looked at that old man, suddenly discovered that old face. Unknowingly, tears were streaming down. Finally, they reached the tunnel that led out of the valley. The cries behind them had already resounded through the entire valley. The old man's body started to tremble. Suddenly, he abruptly turned around, once again, gazed at this land, this valley, this sky. The Meow people far away exclaimed. Many of them jumped up in surprise. However, the next moment, the great shaman shut his eyes tightly, as if he wanted to carve everything on this land into his heart, frowned tightly, once again turned around. In the valley, a sudden silence. Innumerable gazes seemed to be silently shouting behind him. The muscles on the great shaman's face twitched slightly, slowly stepped out, disappeared into that tunnel. In the 7-mile cave, silence. After a long time, not knowing who was the first to cry out, the next moment, the entire valley was filled with sorrowful, sobbing sounds. 10,000 great mountains, passing through the Black Forest, and then over 7 treacherous mountain ranges. It was a tall mountain shrouded in black air all year round, the Een wind howling. And in this barren mountain, without a single tree, not a single blade of grass, there was a huge cave. The cave entrance was 3 zhang high, 5 zhang wide. Een wind howled out all year round, mixed with sharp sounds, as if a certain enraged spirit howling incessantly. In the middle of the cave entrance, a stone statue stood upright, the size of a real person, looked like a beautiful lady, facing the depths of the subdued demon cave, stood silently. The cold wind, howling all year round, blew incessantly on the stone statue, making a deep sound, like in a raging storm, that fragile wooden plank that blocked out the wind and rain. Just that, she seemed to never retreat. The black-clothed lich was standing in front of the stone statue, staring at it silently. The evil dragon beside him seemed to be especially afraid of this stone statue. It subconsciously distanced itself from it. After looking around for a while, it let out a cry and ran up the mountain. Not long after, he disappeared into the black gas. The bone-chilling cold wind fluttered the evil shaman's black clothes. In this desolate scenery, this person seemed to gradually become illusory, with a trace of unreality. He continued to stare for a long, long time, so long that even Jean Pinger began to wonder if this black-clothed man had also turned into a stone statue. Luckily, escaping from that black forest, at the same time accidentally discovered a killer knife stabbed deeply into the rock crevice below the cliff. Jean Pinger vaguely guessed, could it be that Ghost King's sect General Kill-to-Life monk had actually entered this place earlier than her? However, although the killer saber was still there, the killer monk was nowhere to be seen. Since he was gone and his magical weapon was still there, one could well imagine the danger. Perhaps the killer monk had most likely met with a mishap. The Grand Miria Mountains was truly filled with killing intent at every step. But after Jean Pinger pondered, she still secretly followed the evil shaman's footsteps. Along the way, she knew that the evil shaman had special skills and was even more careful, not daring to be careless. She did not dare to carelessly approach that black-clothed monster and that evil dragon. In addition, the evil shaman most likely thought that the person following him had died in the Black Forest and did not notice Jean Pinger behind him. Just like that, Jean Pinger followed him all the way to the Subdue Devil Ancient Cave. Right now, Jean Pinger was crouching behind a small hill, watching that black figure from afar. Could not help but start to wonder if this black-clothed man was going to stand in front of this female statue for the rest of his life. From arriving at the Subdued Devil Cave till now, the evil shaman had already stared motionlessly at this statue for more than 8 hours. Just when Jean Pinger was about to close her eyes and fall asleep from boredom, the evil shaman's figure finally moved. Jean Pinger perked up and quickly looked carefully. The black-robed lich seemed to have gone through a long period of contemplation, or perhaps a struggle, before he finally made a decision. He silently bowed towards the female statue and respectfully bowed towards it. From afar, Jean Pinger saw that evil shaman, facing the statue, quietly said something, but because it was too far away, she could not hear it at all. After which, the evil shaman's body slowly turned and floated deeper into the subdued devil ancient cave. Jean Pinger frowned tightly. The mystery in her heart grew bigger and bigger. That ancient cave obviously had some great secret. It was very possible that it was where the mysterious person Shangwan Su and the evil shaman were talking about was at. But in this extremely desolate place with barren hills and unruly rivers, why would there be such a female statue, and just right in the middle of the cave entrance? And looking at the evil shaman's expression towards the statue, it was obvious that he had a close relationship with this statue. Most likely, there was an unexplainable past. Just when Jean Pinger saw that the evil shaman was about to disappear into the ancient cave, she planned to lean out and quietly sneak over to take a closer look at the statue. Suddenly, the evil shaman's body suddenly stopped. Jean Pinger was shocked, almost thought that she had exposed herself in her haste. Couldn't help but feel regretful. Just as she was panicking, she realized that the evil shaman did not even turn back to look at her, as if he did not notice her. She then felt relieved, quickly hid herself, and again secretly peeked out, looked towards that ancient cave. With this look, she could not help but stare. Just in front of that female statue, at the entrance of the subdued devil ancient cave, a ball of white gas suddenly appeared in the air, forming a strong contrast with the surrounding black gas and wind. And the evil shaman also stopped, quietly watching this ball of white gas. The white gas gathered more and more, gradually condensed into a human shape. From Jean Pinger's point of view, it was a tall man, right hand holding a huge sword, left hand holding a huge shield. His body was completely formed by the white gas, swaying in the wind, but his body movements and even the expression on his face were all clearly visible. Jean Pinger was stunned speechless. After a long while, she inhaled a breath of cold air, quietly muttered to herself, "What a good nether spirit!" She was from an evil faction, more or less knew a little about this kind of ghostly matter. Since ancient times, humans grow old and die. Only the soul does not perish. When one's lifespan ends, the soul will leave the body and reincarnate into the next life, generation after generation, reincarnating endlessly. But in this world, there are vengeful spirits because of greed, anger, infatuation, the three poisons: fear, evil, fear, longing for the mortal world, looking back to the past, unwilling to be reincarnated. They are nether spirits. When Ghost Li was still Jadian's little disciple Sha Danan, he and Anan fell into the forsaken abyss in Kongsang Mountain's Thousand Bats ancient cave. At that heartless sea, they encountered countless of nether spirits in the abyss. But those nether spirits were mortal souls, killed by Bloodforger and could not be reincarnated. Normal people will be harmed when they encounter them. But in the eyes of cultivators, they were not powerful evildoers. So Sha Danan and Anan could survive for a long time before their cultivation was completed. The nether spirit that Jean Pinger saw was not a normal nether spirit. It was the rarest legendary evil spirit. This kind of soul was most likely a person with profound cultivation when they were alive, but after death, because of some extremely deep resentment and infatuation, they actually abandoned the afterlife and were willing to protect something, becoming a desolate wild ghost drifting between the living world. This kind of evil spirit, their cultivation is already quite high, and with the ghost power after death, they're even more ferocious. Normal cultivators are not their opponent. It could be said they are 1 in 10,000 ferocious ghosts. But cultivators usually value the afterlife more than normal people, rarely abandon the afterlife. That is why evil spirits are so rare. When Jean Pinger suddenly saw it, she was really surprised. But looking over, that black evil shaman did not seem to be surprised. Facing this evil spirit that blocked his way, he only slowly raised his head. The evil spirit's body, formed by the white gas, was extremely tall, almost blocking the entire subdued devil ancient cave entrance. The evil shaman looked at this evil spirit, holding a sword and shield like a god of war, suddenly sighed. "You are finally willing to come out and see me?" he faintly said. The evil spirit coldly stared at the evil shaman, his white gas and the evil shaman's black clothes and black shadow, like two extremes that would never compromise. "You are a traitor who betrayed the lady. What right do you have to say such words?" The evil shaman's body seemed to tremble. He who was always unfathomable was actually stabbed by such words to the point that his entire body was in pain. He raised his head and looked at that angry face. After a long while, he remained silent, slowly lowered his head. Chapter 254. Move aside. The evil shaman demon was silent for a long time, slowly said. That evil spirit coldly looked at him, said, "Before the goddess statue, don't tell me you still have no remorse." The evil shaman demon's black clothes moved again. Seemed like under the black clothes, he was also very agitated, just that he did not turn back to look at that female statue. "I am not wrong. It is the goddess who is wrong," he said bitterly. "Oh!" The evil spirit suddenly roared. The roar like thunder in the horizon instantly fell on the mortal world, directly blasting sand and stones away. "Bastard! You shameless bastard! You actually dare to say such words!" Jean Pinger frowned tightly, could not help but covered her ears at such a distance. She could not hear the conversation clearly, but the evil spirit's sudden roar was like thunder beside her, making her ears ring. Far away, the evil shaman demon's face was veiled. His expression could not be seen, but his voice was getting more and more desolate and pained. "I am not wrong. I am not wrong," he muttered to himself, not knowing if he was talking to the evil spirit or to himself, or maybe he was talking to the statue behind him. Blackwood quickly kneeled down before the goddess statue and begged for forgiveness. "Put an end to your delusions, and we will still be brothers. If not, from today onwards, don't blame me for being heartless." The evil shaman demon's body shook, looked up, and said, You still acknowledge me as your brother?" "Yes," the evil spirit shouted. "As long as you put an end to your delusions, after begging for forgiveness, wait for the goddess with me. Guard this subdued devil ancient cave. You Blackwood will forever be my brother." The evil shaman demon's black clothes fluttered in the wind. Indistinctly his agitation could be felt, just that, after a moment, his body gradually calmed down. His entire person also did not speak. And that evil spirit looked at him. His original expectant expression finally turned into an even deeper rage. "You still not turning back?" the evil spirit angrily shouted. The evil shaman demon's voice right now had completely calmed down, like his usual tone, quietly said, "I have no way of turning back." "Oh!" the ferocious spirit bellowed. The huge sword slashed down, waving in front of the evil shaman. In that instant the sand flew up. The land near and far seemed to tremble. Jean Pinger's countenance changed. This fierce spirit's skills were much higher than she had imagined. But that shaman demon did not have any fear. Coldly looked at that fierce spirit, said, "Big brother." The fierce spirit angrily said, "Shut up. I'm not your big brother." The shaman demon indifferently said, "Even if you do not acknowledge me, I will still acknowledge you as my big brother forever." But at that time it was really the lady's fault. Now that things have come to this, I will help the lady to complete her unfinished task. The evil spirit became even more enraged, shouted, "Are you crazy?" The shaman demon inhaled deeply, said, "Even if I am crazy, I will still do this." After speaking, his body floated, drifted towards the subdued devil cave. The evil spirit was obviously enraged. With a loud roar, the huge sword slashed down towards the evil shaman's head. The power of this sword was even stronger than before. The entire ancient cave entrance's stone walls started to tremble, looking like it was about to collapse. Jean Pinger watched from afar, still couldn't help but worry for the evil shaman demon. Just that the evil shaman demon had already entered the subdued devil cave. His figure was blocked by the stone walls. How he fought with the evil spirit, Jean Pinger could not see. And in the ancient cave, After the sand and stones settled down, the evil spirit bellowed incessantly, but the evil shaman demon's figure had already disappeared. Only in the deep darkness of the ancient cave, the evil shaman demon's faint voice was heard. "Big brother, you are a peerless hero in life and in death. Just that we are now the same kind of people. Why must you?" The evil spirit's shrill cry. The cry was mournful, as if there was a raging fire burning in his heart and lungs. The subdued devil cave became silent. Obviously, the evil shaman demon had already gone far away. The evil spirit was silent. After a moment, he unhurriedly turned towards the stone statue at the subdued devil cave entrance. The huge white body slowly twisted, bursts of white air, like green smoke lingering around, twining around the female statue. "Lady," a low choked sob, the sorrow and vicissitudes of a lifetime, with an indistinct trace of helplessness, quietly reverberated between heaven and earth. And his figure also gradually drifted, slowly disappeared in the black air and wind. The subdued devil cave again resumed its tranquility, as if nothing had happened. Only that female statue still stood there quietly, and the never-ending eerie cries from the depths of the subdued devil cave, incessantly shouting. That voice seemed to be even more mournful. Central Plains, south, majestic Fox Mountain. Under the desolate mountain range, concealed the evil sect Ghost King's sect headquarters. Numerous evil sect disciples bustled in and out. In the deepest part of this place, in that huge natural cave, Ghost King expressionlessly stood on the platform, looking at the two ancient strange beasts in the blood pool below. Kuei Nyo soaked in the blood water, motionless. Even its eyes seemed to have dimmed. And the yellow bird, which was struggling with all its might a while ago, right now seemed to be suppressed by some strange force. Its mind also became weary, quietly soaked in the blood water, no longer moving. The hidden dragon cauldron, suspended alone in the air, glimmered with red light, slowly turning, projecting rays of red light screen, enveloping Kuei Nyo and Yellow Bird. A thick stench of blood filled the cave. A black figure suddenly flashed. Ghost King's sect's most mysterious Mr. Ghost flew up, appeared beside Ghost King. Ghost King looked at him, said, "How is it?" Mr. Ghost attire looked similar to that mysterious evil shaman demon who appeared in the southern border, both dressed in black, a black veil covering his face, just that his voice sounded even older. Right now his black veil moved slightly, nodded slightly, said, "It's almost done. Kuei Nyo has been subdued. Yellow Bird in less than 3 days will also be able to return to the formation. For Divinity's blood formation is already half completed." Ghost King did not speak, slowly nodded. Mr. Ghost indifferently said, "Disregarding the good faction, just half of this For Divinity's blood formation's power is already enough to wipe out one Du clan and He Huan sect." Ghost King glanced at him, slowly said, "Well, I want to deal with this Qing Yun sect Zhu Xian sword formation." Mr. Ghost was silent. Ghost King turned, unhurriedly walked away, at the same time said, "I will speed up the search for the other 2 spiritual beasts. The matters here. We'll leave it to you." Mr. Ghost watched that figure gradually walking away. A strange glint flashed in his eyes, not knowing what he was thinking. After a long time, he then turned, quietly pondered, suddenly sighed. His figure flashed, again flew down to the blood pool. In the ancient cave, the stench of blood suddenly thickened again. Ghost King walked out from that blood pool ancient cave, his hands clasped behind his back, walked through the long tunnel, came to a crossroad. After hesitating for a moment, a trace of sadness seemed to flash past his face. He turned and walked towards the right side of the path. Along the way, he met many Ghost King sect disciples. When they saw Ghost King, they all lowered their heads and paid their respects. Ghost King ignored them and just slowly walked past. Until the end of the path, it was that cold stone chamber. He stood in front of the door. His expression, which was as steady as Mount Tai, suddenly seemed to have aged a lot. A low sigh. He pushed open the stone door and walked in. A gust of cold air hit him in the face. Ghost King closed the stone door. The cold stone chamber was not big. The furnishings were extremely simple. Only a cold stone platform in the middle of the chamber. Bai Yao, her face so pale that there was not a trace of blood, quietly lying on it, both her hands at her chest, holding the golden Yuan bell. A girl quietly sat beside her, staring at her. Ghost King walked up. His eyes landed on his beloved daughter's face. The corner of his eyes suddenly twitched. Even the hands behind him could not help but instantly clench tightly. 10 years. It had been a whole 10 years. For 10 years, there was not a day when he was not sad for his daughter, to the extent that he even deliberately reduced the number of visits to Bai Yao, in case he could not extricate himself. His only beloved daughter, his voice, also became deep and hoarse. Yuji, let me and Bai Yao alone for a while. Yuji slowly stood up, turned, slightly bowed to Ghost King, and then walked out. Ghost King's eyes swept past her figure, did not speak. Bang! A low sound. The stone door opened and closed. In the cold stone chamber, only father and daughter were left. Ghost King slowly sat down beside Bai Yao. Bai Yao, father has not come to see you for a long time. Are you angry at me? His deep voice quietly reverberated in the stone chamber, carrying endless sorrow. Only Bai Yao was still lying calmly. Ghost King stared at that beautiful face in a daze. You and your mother look so alike. Even your temperament is almost the same. Do you know, Bai Yao? When your mother passed away, I did not get to see her for the last time, but I know she entrusted you to me. For so many years, I was afraid that I did not treat you well. I would not have the face to meet your mother in the netherworld. But, this person who was feared and hated by countless people, right now, even his voice started to tremble, saying what he had said countless times in these 10 years, said, How can you be so silly? Bai Yao was silent, still lying quietly before him. On her pale face, there was not a trace of pain or sadness. On the contrary, indistinctly a faint smile. Bai Yao, Ghost King quietly called out, did not speak again. He just sat there quietly, accompanying his only beloved daughter, until, on the stone door of the cold stone chamber, suddenly a knocking sound was heard. Ghost King frowned. A murderous glint flashed past his eyes. These 10 years, other than that ghostly, no one dared to disturb him when he was accompanying his daughter. As for ghostly, in his eyes, there was only Bai Yao. Ghost King did not say anything to him. But now that Ghostly was not here, someone dared to violate Ghost King's taboo. It was really rare. Ghost King snorted, stood up, used his sleeve to gently wipe away the indistinct tears at the corner of his eyes, breathed deeply. When he turned around again, he was already that Ghost King that countless people revered. He unhurriedly walked to the door, opened it, and walked out. Outside the door stood only one person. Qing Long. Ghost King frowned. Qing Long was the leader of the 4 great holy envoys of Ghost King's sect, and was also his trusted aide. He had always relied on him. And he had always been cautious in his actions, would never do anything to disturb him and Bai Yao. Seemed like something big had happened. Ghost King looked over. Qing Long quietly said, There is news from the southern border. Ghost King frowned and said, What is it? Qing Long glanced at Ghost King, said, I heard that Ghostly has already found the person who knows the soul return unusual skill and brought him back. This was not a trivial matter. Ghost King, who was usually calm and composed, also beamed with joy, could not help but step forward and said, Really? Qing Long nodded, sighed in his heart. The deep bond of flesh and blood, it was really something that no one could bear part with. Ghost King looked up at the sky, inhaled deeply, calmed himself down, but his hands were still trembling slightly, said, Who is that person? How did Ghostly find him? Qing Long said, That person is one of the southern border 5 tribes, Miao tribe's great shaman. As for how did Ghostly know that he possesses the soul return unusual skill, that I don't know. Ghost King nodded and said, Don't care about him, as long as he can save Yaoer. If he can save Yaoer, then it's fine. His words were earnest. He really wished that the great shaman and Ghostly were in front of him right now. How many days have they left? How much longer will it take for them to reach here? Ghost King asked. Qing Long said, This news was leaked by Ghostly himself to our spies in the southern region. I heard that because that great shaman was seriously injured and unable to fly, so he could only walk slowly. Ghost King was stunned, said, seriously injured, what happened? Qing Long said, I heard that it was the internal strife between the southern border 5 tribes. Other than that, he hesitated for a moment, said, seems like Ghostly was also seriously injured and he was injured by the good faction. Ghost King's gaze froze, said, what happened? Qing Long shook his head and said, the specific situation is still not clear. The southern border has always been where Funxiang Valley's power is. It is difficult for our people to infiltrate. I'm afraid we will have to wait for Ghostly to return and ask again. But over at the southern side, it has always been Lao Bai who is in charge. This time the news was also sent back by him. But in his words, it seemed. Ghost King coldly said, what did Baihu say? Qing Long was silent for a while, said, Baihu mentioned that together with Ghostly, there was another, a foxy lady. Ghost King's countenance changed. Qing Long glanced at Ghost King, slowly continued. Other than that, Baihu also specially mentioned in the news that monkey beside Ghostly seemed to be different. A cold glint flashed in Ghost King's eyes. After a long while, he then slowly said, Three-eyed spiritual monkey, has it already opened its spiritual eyes? Qing Long was silent, did not speak. Outside the icy cold stone chamber, it suddenly quietened down. Ghost King slowly turned. His eyes landed on that stone door. His eyes seemed to penetrate through this thick stone door, saw that serene lady. Yao, are you looking at father? Ghost King in his heart unhurriedly recited. 10,000 great mountains, subdue, devil ancient cave. Jean Pinger quietly moved, nearing that mysterious, eerie, ancient cave entrance. Right now, the evil shaman had already gone in for a long time. That evil spirit had also disappeared and never appeared again. The entire ancient cave entrance was cold and silent. Only the yin wind from the subdue, devil ancient cave was still howling incessantly. Gradually, Jean Pinger neared that statue of the lady. She cautiously neared. The surroundings were still very quiet. Until she was 3 chi away from the statue, there was only the howling of the wind. There was no other movement. Jean Pinger suddenly felt as if she could hear her own heartbeat. She composed herself and carefully looked around, especially at the subdued devil ancient cave. It was pitch black inside, bottomless, as if there was a terrifying demon hiding in the darkness, opening its ferocious mouth, roaring incessantly. Jean Pinger frowned slightly. She instinctively felt that in that darkness, evil energy surged to the sky, causing her blood and chi to surge. It was really unbearable. Just that at this moment, her curiosity far surpassed everything else. That female statue in her heart was really a mysterious existence. No matter what, she must take a good look at this statue. In the next moment, her eyes fell on the stone statue. This must be a beautiful lady. Jean Pinger softly muttered in her heart. Her graceful eyebrows were slender across her eyes, and her face, which was shaped like a melon seed, had slightly stiff lines. Her lips were pursed, her eyes determined. Like after thousands of trials and tribulations, she finally made up her mind. But her face, her expression, was strangely gentle, a little sorrowful, a little sour. Thousands of years of wind and frost. Can it wear away the beauty of the past? You stand alone in the years for whom? Jean Pinger silently watched, slowly stretched out her hand, touched the statue. She did not notice. Behind her, at the moment her hand touched the statue, suddenly white gas appeared, gradually condensed, gradually formed into a human shape, revealing that evil spirit. Under her hand, it was a coarse stone. After countless years of cold wind and snow, the scars of wind and rain, as if under Jean Pinger's fair hand, one by one, revealed from the statue to her palm, to her heart. This lady, what kind of lady was she exactly? Jean Pinger seemed to be infatuated, deeply attracted by that female statue. Behind, that evil spirit had fully appeared, her face angry, the enormous sword raised up high, suddenly with a loud shout, abruptly slashed down. Chapter 255. The darkness stretched endlessly. Only the sound of the wind howling became more mournful. The evil shaman walked in the dark tunnels of the subdued, devil-ancient cave, like a spirit walking towards the nine nether. The deeper he walked into the ancient cave, the wider it became, but the surrounding darkness also became deeper. Walking on this gloomy and horrifying path, the evil shaman could even close his eyes and walk forward. For so many years, he had wandered here alone, and now he was finally going to change his own fate with his own hands. Perhaps, and the fate of countless people in the world. The wind howled just in front of him. A spot of faint light suddenly lit up in front of him. Even though that light was so dim, but in this stretch of darkness, it was especially striking. The evil shaman stopped. That faint light flickered gently in the darkness, flickering indeterminately, like beckoning, like enticing, like yearning, like ridiculing. The wind blew his black clothes, just like in the past countless years. He stared at that place. Many years ago, he was also standing here, but at that time, he still had his brother beside him, and before him, there was a thin and weak figure who seemed to be able to block out the heaven and earth. And now, there was only him alone. Nyang Nyang. He lowered his head slightly and called out in a low voice. Then, he floated forward towards that faint light, like a moth flying determinedly. The faint light flourished. The wind in the ancient cave suddenly became more violent. Originally, there was only a spot of light, slowly spread out from that spot, slowly illuminating the surroundings. On the uneven ground, rotten white bones were everywhere. Some of them were humans, some of them were ferocious beasts. Under the illumination of the dim light, countless densely packed and crisscrossing cracks appeared on the huge cave wall and the hard rock. It was as if someone had torn it apart with their bare hands. It was a ghastly sight. In the darkness, a voice in the deepest part of that dim light, carrying an icy chill, gently reverberated. "You are back." The voice was long, reverberating in this ancient cave walls. The evil shaman did not speak. He only stood in that spot of light, stood there for a moment, then stretched out his arm from his black clothes. In his hand was the black staff inlaid with bone jade. "Ho!" A roar suddenly resounded like thunder, causing a commotion in the ancient cave. The surrounding darkness instantly retreated. In the depths of the dim light, in the blink of an eye, a glaring light flashed out, like countless tentacles of the devil, towards the lich demon, towards the two sacred tools, howling madly. Even the stone walls of the ancient cave, which had stood there for millions of years, began to shake. Large and small rocks began to fall. At this moment, the whistling, mournful winds sounded like heavy, longing breaths. "Do you still remember what Her Highness looked like?" The lich stared at the glaring radiance that was baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, and suddenly said this quietly. In the strong light, the flickering light seemed to freeze for a moment. The lich's black robes fluttered in the strong, wind. Even his voice sounded uncertain. "Her statue is still standing at the entrance of the cave. In the depths of a light, there was no sound, only the flickering light, illuminating the evil lich's figure. The evil lich did not speak, unhurriedly drifted into the depths of the light. A spacious flat ground appeared. This place was completely different from the outside. The solid stone walls were mostly intact, and on the ground, there were many huge skeletons, and most of them were intact. Counting carefully, there were as many as 13 of them. These 13 skeletons were of different shapes, emanating thick evil energy, formed a circle with varying distances, all facing inwards and their backs outwards, as if guarding something. In the black, eerie, empty eye sockets, there seemed to be a cold gaze. Following the evil lich's sudden appearance, it started to approach this strange circle. Suddenly, in the cold, eerie wind, a sound that made one's teeth sour. On these skeletons, a few heads started to turn, slowly turned, and looked towards the evil lich. In this heart-stopping, terrifying moment, the evil lich did not seem to care about these skeletons. His gaze, from the beginning to the end, was only looking at one direction. That was in the middle of the circle formed by the 13 skeletons. A skeleton the size of a human was quietly lying on a white jade platform that was only 3 inches tall. What was different from the skeletons around was that this human skeleton was still covered with silk. It was unknown how many years had passed, but under the illumination of the dim light, the color of the silk was still incomparably bright. All the light in the surroundings, even the whistling wind, were emitted from this set of white bones. The evil lich slowly drifted near the skeleton. The light circulated. The strange light was sometimes long and sometimes short, as if in the unseen world there was a pair of eyes watching him. Around him, all the 13 skeletons suddenly made sounds, almost like they were revived at the same time. The heads turned, the deep eye sockets stared at the evil lich. The next moment, that piece of silk soared up, floated in the air. As if there was a low growl, in that instant the dazzling light shone out from under the silk, like an unstoppable arrow leaving the bow, whistled out in all directions. Woo! A sound. The evil lich could even feel that the light, with surging evil power, rushed past his ears. The violent sound of the wind, mixed with eerie cold laughter, started to reverberate in this ancient cave. Those 13 skeletons suddenly raised their heads together, howled to the sky. In this strange atmosphere, the evil lich slowly landed in front of the white bones. In the white light, that human-sized skeleton clearly had 5 broken places: the right hand, left ankle, larynx, skull, and the entire spine was gone. Right now, reflecting the light emitted by the bones, a white pearl was placed on his right hand, a jade plate on his left ankle, and at the place where the larynx was broken, a ring was placed. The evil lich unhurriedly took out the jade bone embedded on the black staff, bit by bit, and then gently placed it on the skull of the white bones. In the middle of the forehead, there happened to be a small hole the jade bone was perfectly placed in. In the darkness, there seemed to be a voice calling out from afar. The evil lich's body suddenly trembled, his entire body swayed. The light reflected in his eyes, like 2 balls of burning white flames. That flame burning, whose soul and body was it? He seemed to call out softly, but no one could hear clearly what he said. The next moment, he placed the black staff in the middle of the white bones, at the place of the spine. Suddenly, everything was still. The whistling wind stopped. The dazzling white light disappeared. The darkness, like a boundless sea, surging waves silently rushed up, drowning everything. Who was it, silently waiting in the darkness? That was the deepest darkness, or the daybreak of fantasy. Everything calmed down, just like the desolate silence that hadn't changed since time immemorial. The white bones stopped shouting and became silent. A voice in the deepest part of the darkness and silence, quietly, sounded. Bang, 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 bang. That was the sound of a heartbeat, brimming with new vitality. The surroundings were still pitch black, but the magical heartbeat sound gradually became louder. Slowly, it started a sound of flowing water. No, it was not the sound of water. It was the surging blood vessels, whistling out from the heart, carrying endless joy and unstoppable vigor, dancing wildly in the darkness. After sleeping for countless years, after endless coldness, once again warmth. Who was it, quietly panting in the darkness? That surging sound became more and more violent, like the cries of thousands of years of resentment from the imprisoned soul. Every drop of reborn blood carried madness and unyieldingness. Slowly, the strange sounds around started to sound. The sturdy stone walls once again shook. Those white bones in the darkness once again cried out, welcoming the reborn evil demon. Only the evil lich, his figure hidden in the darkness, feeling the invisible but wildly dancing evil demon in front of him, feeling that reborn soul and flowing blood vessels. That feeling was about to engulf him. Bang! A deafening sound. The huge force smashed a huge pit on the hard ground. Jean Pinger flew out, narrowly avoiding this sneak attack from behind, her face uncontrollably pale. Chapter 256. Just now, the stone statue seemed to have some sort of magical power that attracted all of her spirit and soul, causing her to completely forget about everything else. However, when the sound of the wind suddenly rose above her head, the little bit of instinct that she had painstakingly cultivated for many years suddenly woke her up. Almost at the last moment, she rushed out and luckily managed to escape with her life. Jean Pinger had yet to catch her breath. Suddenly the sound of the wind behind her was intense. That fierce spirit had already caught up. Obviously his body was made up of formless white air, but the huge sword and shield in his hands seemed to be as light as a child's toy. Jean Pinger knew how powerful it was, did not dare to take it head-on. Her body flashed, and she hurriedly dodged backwards. With these two strikes, the fierce spirit had already chased Jean Pinger several zhongs away from the subdued devil ancient cave entrance. Once she landed, Jean Pinger's right hand flipped over, purple light rose. The magical weapon Purple Light Blade was already in her hand. Facing this ferocious spirit, she did not dare to let her guard down. Just that although she was on high alert, after that fierce spirit chased her 3 zhongs away from the cave, he did not continue to pursue, his formless body still floating beside that female statue. Who are you? Dared to come to this evil demon land, and dare to profane the shaman goddess's statue? That fierce spirit stared at her with its huge copper bell eyes, coldly said. Jean Pinger secretly heaved a sigh of relief, composed herself, said clearly, "You have misunderstood. I did not mean to offend this goddess statue. Just that when I first saw her, she was really too beautiful. Involuntarily used my hands to touch the statue." That evil spirit snorted, his expression slightly calmed down. It was clear that he most likely knew that this stone statue indeed had magical abilities, but his voice was still as cold as before. "Seeing that you are young, and this is the first time, I will not argue with you. This is the land of demons and ghosts. It's not a place for you to come. You'd better leave quickly." Jean Pinger frowned. According to her thoughts, after following the evil shaman for so long, most likely the most important secret was in this subdued devil ancient cave. Unexpectedly, there was such a highly skilled fierce spirit guarding the cave entrance. It was really troublesome. Just that if she forced her way in, not to mention the evil shaman or other monsters inside, just this fierce spirit before her was not easy to deal with. While she was pondering, the fierce spirit saw this woman's eyes sweeping back and forth between him and the goddess's statue, at the same time looking at the dark cave behind him from time to time. It was obvious that she was eyeing this cave. He couldn't help but change his expression. "Hey!" That fierce spirit angrily shouted, said, "Little girl, I advise you not to seek trouble for yourself. This cave is filled with exceptional demons. If you go and you will only be seeking death. And I am guarding the ancient cave. I definitely will not let outsiders in. You better give up early." Jean Pinger snorted. How would she give up so easily? Said, "That black-attired man just now. Didn't he also enter?" The fierce spirit was stunned, his eyes glinting, said, "So you followed that person here?" Jean Pinger observed his expression, vaguely guessed the relationship between the two, but she still continued, "Of course, that guy who doesn't look like a human, doesn't look like a ghost. I am not talking about you. Don't be angry." Jean Pinger, who almost spilled the beans, quickly added on to the enraged fierce spirit and said, "That black-attired man snatched the southern border Meow tribe's sacred weapon Black Staff, right? There's also the Lee tribe's sacred weapon Jade Bone. He just went in. I also wanted to see what exactly he wants." She had not finished her sentence. That fierce spirit's countenance had changed greatly, suddenly gave an earth-shattering roar, forcing Jean Pinger's words back, at the same time shocked her till she turned pale. "What did you say? He has the Black Staff and Jade Bone." The fierce spirit's entire body started to tremble violently. Jean Pinger was stunned, said, "Yes." The fierce spirit howled to the sky, extremely sorrowful and indignant, abruptly turned, looking at him. It was as if he was going to rush into the subdued devil ancient cave and perish together with that evil shaman. But at this moment, Jean Pinger and the fierce spirit were both stunned. As if the never-ending wind blowing out from the subdued devil ancient cave suddenly stopped. Between heaven and earth, it was as if something was missing, especially silent. The fierce spirit's face instantly turned ashen. His mouth opened wide, as if he wanted to say something, and also like he wanted to use all his strength to shout, but no sound came out. Then he slowly turned around, looked at that female statue. Suddenly, his body shook violently again. His huge body went limp, actually knelt down before the female statue, crying loudly. Jean Pinger was startled. She was from an evil sect, and had seen many strange things in her life, but for such a highly skilled, ferocious spirit to suddenly cry loudly in front of her, it was really the first time in her life she had seen it. Just that the fierce spirit was extremely sorrowful. His huge body kept trembling, although it was formed by white air, but that sorrowful emotion seemed to be vividly displayed before her eyes. Jean Pinger quietly moved over. That fierce spirit did not notice her at all. When she moved near that female statue and was about to take the opportunity to sneak into the subdued devil ancient cave, suddenly her body shook. Her eyes looking at that female statue, she was also stunned. On the cold stone statue, that graceful and beautiful lady, two streams of tears quietly rolled down from the eyes of the stone statue. So, after hundreds and thousands of years, it still could not erase the deep sorrow. Jean Pinger stood behind the fierce spirit in shock, looking at this sorrowful statue. In the cave behind, a low groan was heard, like something, waking up from a long sleep, uttered its first words. The Een wind blew again, the sound even more mournful. Even the sky above, the color of the sky, also dimmed. A bolt of lightning pierced through the black clouds. A bolt of thunder exploded in the horizon. Thunder roared, in a blink tearing the sky. Innumerable black clouds, like boiling, surged over from the 10,000 great mountains, gathered above the subdued devil ancient cave. Above the cave, torrential rain came crashing down, mixed with huge hailstones, causing the ground to be filled with holes. Jean Pinger was shocked, dodged left and right, drifting in the wind and rain. That fierce spirit instead suddenly lifted his head, looked at the sky. All the wind, rain and frost seemed to have no effect on him, but his eyes were filled with despair. He howled to the sky. In this despairing howl, a strange howl sounded from the subdued devil ancient cave, from far to near, faster and faster, louder and louder, until it was already deafening. Jean Pinger only felt a roar in her head, as if it was about to split open. Her countenance changed, hurriedly dashed far away. And that fierce spirit suddenly turned around, using his huge body to block the entrance of the cave, raised his shield, crossed his huge sword, his eyes full of anger, without the slightest fear, stood tall. That howl became louder and louder. In a blink, it had already rushed to the entrance of the ancient cave. Huge thunders exploded in the horizon. Heaven and earth howled, as if the entire 10,000 great mountains were shaking at the same time. In the wind and rain, the fierce spirit looked like a powerless little boat swaying. That deep darkness, like a demonic beast bearing its fangs and brandishing its claws, pounced towards him from the ancient cave. The fierce spirit howled angrily, charged forward. The huge sword reflected the lightning streaking across the horizon, slashed towards the darkness. The black gas was instantly sliced in the middle, but immediately pounced on both sides, with incomparable speed drowning his body. The fierce spirit shouted, far away. Jean Pinger could still hear that voice. Lady, the next moment, the fierce spirit disappeared, the black gas like a mountain, desperately gathered at the entrance of the cave, towards the horizon, towards the earth. A red light suddenly flashed in the darkness. A figure, a man wrapped in a brightly colored silk, with his back facing Jean Pinger, slowly descended from the black gas, stood in front of that female statue. Behind him, the black gas howled incessantly. The shadows swayed, as if there were countless demons howling in ecstasy. Only his back figure seemed somewhat strange. Standing in front of the stone statue, in the wind and rain, he stood silently. Slowly, he stretched out his hand, gently caressed that cold stone statue. A low voice quietly reverberated in the wind and rain, traversing thousands of years of time, traversing countless wind, rain, snow, and frost. Ling Long, Chapter 257. 200 miles north of Central Plains, Xianyou Mountain, was the lofty, majestic Fox Mountain. Looking up from the foot of the mountain, one could see rocks piercing through the air, abrupt and precipitous. Just out on the entire mountain, there was not a single blade of grass or tree, extremely desolate. On the left side of the mountain, spring water emerged from the depths of the mountain, converging into a river called Victorious Water, flowing towards the northeast. Along the way, the number of tributaries increased. The river gradually became bigger. After 300 miles, it flowed into another large river, Fun Water. Since ancient times, in this river, there was a type of azure precious jade, just that no one had ever seen it before. One of the evil sect, 3 big branches. Ghost King's sect headquarters was built in the middle of this hard and heavy rocky mountain. Very few people knew about it. Under Ghost Lee's lead, Xiao Bai and the great shaman, after 15 days of trekking, finally reached this place. Because the great shaman's body was really too weak, the 3 of them plus Xiao Hui had no choice but to walk. Along the way, Ghostly even hired a carriage for the great shaman to ride. The long and arduous journey made the 3 of them look weary, just that on the great shaman and Ghostly, it was a totally different look. Ghostly's injuries were recovering day by day. Maybe it was because he was young. On the other hand, the great shaman looked worse and worse. Compared to when they just left the southern border 7-mile cave 15 days ago, he looked even more frail, not to mention his ashen face. Ever since they entered the mountain path, there were no carriages to ride on. Although he had Ghostly and Xiao Bai to support him, he still panted after every few steps. His stamina was extremely weak. Ghostly was extremely anxious. Sometimes he could not help but fear. If they had not reached majestic Fox Mountain, if this great shaman who saved his life died halfway, he would really regret it for the rest of his life. Luckily this afternoon, under the warm sunlight, the 3 of them finally saw that bare peak of majestic Fox Mountain. Stopping, although they had not reached majestic Fox Mountain, Ghostly heaved a sigh of relief, turned and spoke to the great shaman. "Senior, that barren mountain ahead is where we are going. From here, we just have to walk for a while. By tonight evening, we should be able to reach the foot of the mountain." The great shaman heaved a long sigh, looked up at that mountain, smiled tiredly, and said, "Don't worry, young man. I will not die before I see your sleeping friend." Ghostly was surprised and then apologetic, quietly said, "Senior, I did not mean to." The great shaman retracted his aged eyes, stretched out his hand and patted his shoulder, smiled and shook his head. "I don't mean anything else. If it was me, I'm afraid I would be even more anxious than you." Ghostly was silent, smiled, and said, "Senior, we have been walking for a long time. Let's rest here for a while. We still have to hurry on." The great shaman looked really tired, nodded his head. With Ghostly's support, he found a relatively flat rock beside the mountain path and sat down. "Gigi." Xiao Hui, who had been lying on Ghostly's shoulder, called out twice, jumped down, and landed on the ground. Along the way, it was Xiao Hui who was the most energetic and did not show any signs of fatigue. At this moment, the monkey looked around and saw that there were sparse trees on both sides of the road. After calling out twice, it darted in and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Ghostly glanced at the direction where Xiao Hui had gone, but did not mind, turned back and decided to find a rock to sit down and rest. Walking till today, although the serious injuries he suffered in 7-Mile Cave were serious, but they did not affect his muscles and bones and were getting better day by day, just that the wound on his right shoulder was still aching dully. He used his hand to gently caress the wound. Funxiang Valley Li Sun's figure flashed before his eyes. He coldly snorted in his heart. Just at the next moment, behind Li Sun, there was another graceful figure, clothes as white as snow. Ghostly shook his head, a wave of bewilderment, while pondering. Suddenly Xiao Bai's voice was heard beside him. "Why is majestic Fox Mountain so desolate? I have looked for half a day, and there is not even a single blade of grass or tree." Ghostly frowned, said, "Ever since I came here, it has been like this." Xiao Bai stood beside him, was silent for a moment, shook her head, and said, "When I left this place, majestic Fox Mountain was full of verdant greenery, lush with vegetation, definitely different from now." Ghostly shook his head and said, "That I do not know." Xiao Bai sighed, turned around, and did not say anything. Ghostly glanced at Xiao Bai, knew that 1,000 years ago she had been recuperating with the fox tribe here and had a special feeling towards majestic Fox Mountain, just that he did not know what to say, and with his current state of mind, he did not want to speak too much. As long as he remembered that Bai Yao was in that mountain, and maybe tomorrow at this time, she might be able to be reborn. Once he thought of that, Ghostly could not help but feel his blood boiling. He could not think of anything else. The three of them rested for a while, waiting for the great shaman to recover. Ghostly led the two of them and continued forward. Although he said he was leading the way, actually, it was only the great shaman alone. Xiaobai walked in front alone. Her expression was calm, and she did not speak. However, she seemed to gradually become familiar with the surrounding roads. At the beginning, when they met a few forks in the road, she even asked Ghostly or waited for him to walk on the main road before she followed. Later on, the memories of the past started to awaken in Xiaobai's heart. Naturally, she became the one leading the way, leading the people behind, walking on the mountain path towards majestic Fox Mountain. The monkey Xiao Hui, who had returned from the forest, a few more wild fruits in its hands, munched on them. Behind Xiao Hui hung a big wine bag. It was stolen from the southern border Miao people. Originally, there were still 2 wine bags, but after drinking intermittently along the way, the monkey's alcohol tolerance had actually increased. After 15 days, he had actually finished a large bag of strong alcohol, and he had not gotten drunk again. Along the way, Xiaobai saw the monkey dragging the wine bag around. It was really troublesome, so she used a cloth to sew a belt on the wine bag and let Xiao Hui carry it on its back. Now it was good. Xiao Hui was even happier, carried the wine bag, and ran around all day. 3 humans and 1 monkey, and the sounds of the monkey eating the wild fruits, each with their own thoughts, quietly walked forward. The sun was setting in the west. The sky also slowly darkened. Just before dusk arrived, they finally reached the foot of majestic Fox Mountain. Almost at the same time, the great shaman and Xiao Bai's body shook. The great shaman seemed to feel something, glanced at Xiao Bai, who was standing beside him, said in a low voice, "You felt it too?" Xiao Bai frowned slightly. With her 1,000 years of spiritual fox skills, this spiritual power and senses were naturally not to be underestimated, extremely sharp. Almost at the moment when they reached the foot of majestic Fox Mountain, she suddenly sensed in this high mountain, under this seemingly ordinary desolation, indistinctly a thick, baleful aura seeped out. The intensity of this baleful aura, even with her high skills, she could not help but feel wary. And after carefully sensing, with her own sharp spiritual power, she sensed that there were 2 other dispirited spiritual powers, although unwilling, but they could only resign to their fate, submitted to the baleful aura. In this mountain, most likely, there was a gargantuan secret, slowly reigning in the surprise on her face. Xiaobai, who turned back to her usual expression, glanced at the great shaman. She did not expect this weary and dying old man would actually have such sharp senses, seemed like southern border shaman arts. Indeed had its unique points. She slowly nodded, suppressed her voice, and said, "Such a heavy, baleful aura." The great shaman was silent for a moment, nodded. Both of them looked at Ghostly at the same time. Ghostly's face also had a strange expression. In his sleeve, the sinister orb on the black soul-absorbing stick suddenly lit up. Blood-red light circulated incessantly. Even the sleeves could not hide it. Ghostly slowly took out the soul-absorbing stick, raised it in front of him. At the tip of the stick, the sinister orb's light shone strangely. Circles and circles of bright red light slowly spread out. The blood vessels on the orb, one by one, became clearer, vividly visible. And following his wrist, the sinister orb even sent waves of cold and slightly excited energy throughout his body. Ghostly's gaze was deep. He looked up at the tall mountain. A strange glint flashed past his eyes. That was the sign of the sinister orb's extreme thirst for fresh blood. To him, this was something he was already very familiar with. Ghost King personally stood at the entrance of Ghost King's sect headquarters, a secret door hidden behind a huge rock waiting to welcome them. It was not difficult to imagine how much importance he placed on the great shaman that Ghostly brought back. After the 3 of them appeared before them, Ghost King and Ghostly casually nodded their heads, considered as a greeting, and then quickly walked to the Great Shaman. Assessed the Great Shaman from head to toe. A trace of surprise flashed past their faces, said, "This master, your body." The Great Shaman smiled faintly and said, "Old man is a dying man. My fate is as such. Today, I'm only here to do my part. As for whether it will succeed or not, it will depend on heaven's will." Ghost King bowed to the ground, bowed deeply, in a deep voice said, "Master is an otherworldly master. I will not speak too much. The journey is tiring, and tonight it is already late. Will Master please stay in this cave abode for the night? Make do and rest. Tomorrow I will seek Master's advice again." Chapter 258. The Great Shaman nodded. Looking at his expression, he was indeed very tired. Ghost King waved his hand. Someone ran over and helped the Great Shaman in. The crowd made way. The next moment, the Great Shaman's figure disappeared into the mountain. Ghost King slowly turned around. Right now, standing in front of him, other than Ghostly, there was also a strangely charming lady behind him. As for the monkey Xiao Hui, its 3 eyes were rolling around, sizing up the people in front of it. Ghost King's eyes paused on Xiao Hui for a moment, and then glanced at Xiao by behind Ghostly, and finally back to this young man in front of him. "You are injured?" Ghost King slowly said. Ghostly was silent, only nodded his head. The scene suddenly quieted down. The 2 men stood facing each other. The atmosphere was strange. It had been 10 years. For the past 10 years, Ghost King had devoted himself to teaching Ghostly, but between the 2 of them, there seemed to always be an invisible deep ravine. Behind Ghost King stood Qing Long, Yuji, and many other disciples. Ghostly's eyes slowly swept across. He recognized many of the faces, because many of them were the small evil sects that he had annihilated and brought under Ghost King's sect. Right now, the original Bloodforger Hall branch, Nian Leader, and the rest were also standing in the crowd. Only that wild dog Taoist was not among them. Not sure if he was still roaming the world with that fortune teller, Zhou Isian grandfather and grandson. Ghost King's sect's power seemed to be growing stronger. The mountain breeze blew past, not knowing whose clothes were fluttering, whistling. Deep inside the mountain, there seemed to be a black figure, indistinctly swaying. Ghostly looked away, although he could not see clearly, but he knew who that person in the darkness was. Mr. Ghost. This mysterious person seemed to be forever hidden in the darkness, hiding behind Ghost King. "This lady, is she your friend? You brought her back?" Ghost King indifferently asked. His face did not reveal any unusual expression. Ghostly hesitated for a moment, said, "She said she is your old friend and wanted to come back to visit you." Ghost King was surprised. This answer was out of his expectation. He couldn't help but took a few more glances at Xiao Bai, but he couldn't remember when he knew such a lady. He asked in surprise, "This lady, have we met before?" Xiao Bai stepped forward inside. She then smiled and said, "How is Xiao Qi? Are you still the same as before, spacing out from time to time and looking at a flower in a daze?" Ghost King's body shook violently. A rare look of shock appeared on his face. He was not the only one. Behind him, Azure Dragon, Yu Qi, and the others who had been following him for a long time had expressions of disbelief on their faces. Ghost King stared at Xiao Bai. After a long while said, "Who exactly are you? How do you know Xiao?" "Xiao Qi." Xiao Bai's eyes drifted, looked past the crowd, looked up, saw in the dusk, majestic Fox Mountain shadow was tall and desolate, an exceptionally desolate scene. How much time had quietly slipped between the fingers like sand. "Do you remember," she said faintly, "the origin of the name of this mountain?" Ghost King's eyes lit up, his gaze bright, but the surprise on his face was even heavier. Said in shock, "You were by," Xiao Bai said indifferently. "I am White Fox." The mountain breeze blew past with a sound, swirling up a light dust on the ground, silently flying into the distance. In the secluded stone room, the furnishings were very simple: tables, chairs, bed, simple furniture. This was the Ghost King's sect head's bedroom. The only conspicuous thing should be that red sandalwood table placed against the stone wall, 3 thick stacks of books neatly placed on it, a white jade brush holder on the table, a small brush made of weasel hair placed on it. The ink on the inkstone beside it was still wet. And slightly further away, there was a blue and white brush washer, bright and clear, half a basin of clear water in it. With all these, he gave off a scholarly demeanor, absolutely not the slightest of what the world imagined the evil sect head to look like. Ghost King and Xiao Bai, right now, were standing in this room. Other than them, there was no third person present. On the other side of the stone wall hung a golden painting. In the painting, a beautiful lady, carefully examining a blossoming flower. Beside the flower, a pair of butterflies fluttering. Just that the lady in the painting was so focused, all her attention on that flower, did not seem to notice the butterflies at the side. The painting's brushwork was exquisite. The meticulous slow drawing, unique to the meticulous brushwork style, was vividly displayed by the artist. That lady in the painting almost seemed to come alive. Her infatuated expression was even more vivid. Xiao Bai quietly looked at the lady in the painting. After a long time, quietly sighed, said, "Your painting skills are really amazing. To paint Xiao Qi so realistically, seeing the painting, it is like seeing the person." Ghost King, who was standing behind Xiao Bai, right now was also looking at the painting, a tenderness that he had never shown to others surfaced in his eyes. He quietly shook his head. After a moment, quietly said, "I only regret not being able to save her." Xiao Bai's eyes did not leave the painting, faintly said, "I never knew. The person whom Ghostly wholeheartedly wanted to save was you and Xiao Qi's daughter." Ghost King smiled sadly, said, "When Xiao Qi passed away, I could not make it in time to see her for the last time. These few years, every time I think about it, my heart feels like being cut by a knife. Now she did not leave anything, only Bai Yao. But she actually also." Xiao Bai indifferently said, "She did not choose the wrong person. Choosing you is her good fortune. I think before she died, she definitely did not have any regrets." Ghost King was silent. Xiao Bai stepped forward, stretched out her gentle fingers. Her fingertips gently caressed the lady's delicate and beautiful face. Her eyes gradually glinted, carrying some sorrow, some tenderness. The monkey Xiao Hui, with a strange cry, jumped onto the bed. Returning to Ghost Li's bedroom in majestic Fox Mountain, it did not seem to feel unfamiliar at all. Bounced a few times on the bed, suddenly remembered something, stretched its hand to move the wine bag from behind, pulled out the cork and drank another big mouthful of strong liquor. After a pause, the monkey, with the sound of a long breath, squinted its eyes, its face a blissful and satisfied expression. Ghostly stood beside the bed, watching the monkey's expression, was speechless, slowly shook his head, sighed, turned and walked to the door, opened it and walked out, following which he closed the door behind him. The tunnel was deep, extending forward. He unhurriedly walked in this tunnel in the mountain. Along the way, those who saw him would lower their heads in greeting. Just that his face was indifferent, his eyes only looking ahead, as if there was a place that was beckoning him. Walking past the corner, through the tunnel, the Ghost King's sect disciple's figure gradually disappeared. When he arrived in front of that familiar cold stone room, he only saw a ghost-like silent figure. Yuji's black veil moved. She turned and looked at Ghostly. Ghostly's eyes swept past her veil, landed on the stone door behind her. The next moment, without any hesitation, he walked over, pushed the door open, and entered. The stone door slowly closed behind him. Yuji's figure did not move, stood alone at the door. In the stone chamber, on the cold stone platform, in the rising wisps of white smoke, that beautiful lady was peacefully lying there. The corner of her lips seemed to have a faint smile. Ghostly's back leaned against the stone door. Suddenly, his cold and strong, as if suddenly relaxed, little by little loosened, little by little peeled off. What was left was only a desolate figure, slowly walked up, sat beside her. "I am back, Bai Yao." The light smoke curled up, floated up from the cold stone platform. Looking at Bai Yao's body, it seemed unreal. Her face was that beautiful. Her smile was that warm. Could it be she also knew about this man's return? "You are saved, Bai Yao." His voice, deep and slightly trembling. 10 years, a whole 10 years. "I actually let you lie like this for 10 years. I am really useless. You will definitely blame me, right?" "No, it won't. Why would you blame me? At most you will only smile at me, right?" No answer, only wisps of light smoke. slowly gathered and separated before his eyes. I will definitely save you, Bai Yao. You will definitely wake up. He quietly said, we will be together, Bai Yao. In this lifetime, we will be together. The deep words, along with the light smoke, faintly dispersed, drifted in the stone chamber and then gently dispersed, not leaving a trace. Note 1. Classic of Mountains and Seas. Classic of Mountains, 3rd volume. Northern Mountains Classic. Majestic Fox Mountain. Another 200 miles north of Xianyou Mountain, called Majestic Fox Mountain, no vegetation, much verdant. Shangshui emerges, and northeast flows into Finshui, much of which is dark jade. Chapter 259. Funxiang Valley, Secret Room. The simple and unadorned screen separated the stone room. Shangguansu, dressed in gray, quietly stood at the same spot, patiently waiting. After a long time, Funxiang Valley Master Yun Elan's aged voice was heard from behind the screen. I heard, junior brother, this time, when you were pursuing the nine-tailed celestial fox. Your movements were strange, and at the last moment, you suddenly ordered all the disciples to retreat. Is there such a matter? Shangguansu's lips revealed a faint cold smile. He himself could guess who Yun Elan's herd was from. In the entire Funxiang Valley, other than himself, only Yun Elan's most beloved disciple Li Sun could speak to him here. But Shangguansu did not distinguish anything, only unhurriedly said, that's right. Yun Elan was silent for a moment, said, if so, as a senior brother, I am very puzzled. Will junior brother please enlighten me? Shangguansu faced the screen, bowed slightly, said, I dare not. I was pursuing the nine-tailed celestial fox on the way, met someone, and so ordered the disciples to immediately turn back and immediately report to senior brother. Yun Elan's voice was clearly surprised, said, who is it to make junior brother so concerned? Shangguansu unhurriedly spat out 2 words, said, shaman demon. Behind the screen, it suddenly became silent. For a long time, there was no sound. Shangguansu patiently stood there. Yun Elan's reaction was within his expectations. That day when he saw the shaman demon, the shock in his heart was also no small matter. After an unknown period of time, behind the screen, Yun Elan's calm voice was heard. They finally still could not hold it in. From Yun Elan's voice, Shangguansu could not tell what this senior brother was thinking. Was it anxiety? Was it shock? He could not tell at all. He stared at the screen and continued, and one more thing, Yun Elan, and this time he was surprised. Shangguansu inhaled deeply, said, from the shaman demon's hands, took 2 of the 5 tribes' sacred weapons, Black Staff and Jade Bone. What? Yun Elan could no longer maintain his calm and blurted out from behind screen. Shangguansu sneered in his heart, but his expression did not change, said, it should be the evil beast found a lead tribe shaman from somewhere, and then taught him the black fire evil skill, and then used it to incite the Miao and Li tribes to fight, thus snatching the Black Staff Jade Bone from the Miao tribe great shaman's hands. After that, the Li tribe shaman wanted to rebel against the demon beasts, but the demon beasts were already prepared and let the evil shaman use the black fire essence pearl to kill him and took back the 2 sacred weapons. Yun Elan gave a cold snort and said, there's actually such a reckless fellow. Pausing for a moment, his voice faintly revealed a bit of sternness as he said, these saint artifacts are of great importance. Why aren't you making a move? Shangguansu's expression was indifferent, said, when I arrived, the Black Staff Jade Bone was already in the evil shaman's hands, and he also had the evil dragon with him. Yun Elan fell silent. After a long while he slowly sighed and said, heaven's will, heaven's will. Our 100-year plan has been ruined just like that. Shangguansu did not speak. Qingyan Hill, Tong Tian Peak. White clouds drifted, celestial air lingered. This place like a paradise on earth. Crane cries, clear and melodious, reverberated in the horizon. The crystal hall that was destroyed in a fierce battle 10 years ago, by now it had already been rebuilt, and it looked magnificent, the scale grand, even more so than that year. Dozens of huge red stone pillars propped up the beams, the roof made of yellow glass, under the sunlight, dazzling the eyes, a glorious scene. In the middle of the roof, towering like a pagoda, the Jade ring was in the shape of a pagoda, from big to small, from bottom to top. There were 36 levels. The tip was yellow stone, crystal clear. The eaves spread out in all directions, flying out, east, south, west, north. Four sides were carved with golden dragons playing with pearls. Southeast, southwest, northwest, northeast. Four sides were carved with colorful phoenixes dancing. The golden dragons and colorful phoenixes were holding glass wind chimes in their mouths, fluttering with the wind, making clear sounds, adding some celestial feeling. In the crane cries and wind chimes, Lu Sweki in white unhurriedly walked up the stone steps in front of the crystal hall. From time to time, there were a few Qingyun disciples who were cleaning the stone steps. When they saw Lu Sweki, they all nodded their heads in greeting. Among them, one or two youths who had just joined. Their skills were still young, captivated by Lu Sweki's appearance. After one look, they did not dare to look again. Their faces blushed and lowered their heads. Lu Sweki returned the greetings one by one. His face as expressionless as usual, walked towards that towering, majestic hall at the end of the stone steps. Behind him, suddenly a loud sound was heard. A dragon-like voice broke the silence here. Lu Sweki did not turn back. That was Qin Yun's sect's guardian spiritual beast, Water Unicorn, again crawled out of the water and went to the shore of the pool to bask in the sun and sleep. Everything here was so peaceful and harmonious. Who would know? There was once a youth who angrily came out from here, threw himself into another dirty and bloody world. Lu Sweki finished walking the long stone steps, silently looked at the tall crystal hall, and walked in. Inside the grand hall, light shone in from all directions through the open windows. It seemed especially bright, without the slightest feeling of darkness. Qin Yun's sect head, the world's #1 good faction, Reverend Daoxian, with a smile on his face, sat upright on the main seat in the main hall. On his right sat another person. It was Lu Sweki's teacher, Qin Yun's sect's small bamboo valley head Shuiwa master. Lu Sweki was surprised, this time when she returned from the southern border, because she was sent by Reverend Daoxian. She first returned to Tongtian Peak to report to Reverend Daoxian, and then planned to return to the mountain to see her teacher, Shuiwa Master. She did not expect that Shuiwa Master was also at Tongtian Peak. And looking at this crystal hall, other than Reverend Daoxian and Shuiwa Master, there was no one else, as if both of them were specially waiting for her to return. Seeing Lu Sweki entering the hall, Reverend Daoxian was the first to smile amiably. Shuiwa Master beside him, although had always been cold, but towards her most beloved disciple. Naturally, she was different from others. Her eyes also revealed a doting expression. Lu Sweki walked up, first bowed to Reverend Daoxian, said, "Greetings, sect head Reverend," then turned and also bowed to Shuiwa Master. But towards this teacher, who was like a mother and daughter, her words were much more casual, said, "Teacher, why are you here too?" Reverend Daoxian smiled and said, "Yesterday I received the news and knew that you were returning today, so I sent someone to inform your teacher. And it just so happens that I have some trivial matters to discuss with your teacher. Might as well invite her over." Lu Sweki acknowledged. Shuiwa Master sat at the side, looked at her beautiful disciple. Lu Sweki's snow-white countenance was still as beautiful and expressionless as usual, just that for some reason, she felt that her face was faintly pale. Shuiwa Master's heart was moved. Her brows also frowned slightly. Reverend Daoxian did not have Shuiwa Master's many years of experience with Lu Sweki. Right now, he did not feel that there was anything wrong with Lu Sweki, only smiled and continued, "Sweki, this time going to the southern border, to visit Funxiang Valley Master Yun, Elder Mr. Yun. How is it?" Lu Sweki was silent for a moment, then narrated her experiences in the southern border. Just that in the middle of it, she left out the scene of parting with Ghostly in Tianshui Stockade. Reverend Daoxian and Shuiwa Master sat there without a word, slowly listening to Lu Sweki's narration. Hearing this, Funxiang Valley Master Yun Elon still did not appear. Only Shangwan, Li Sun, and the rest came out to explain. Both of them looked at each other, a strange expression in their eyes, but did not speak. Later on, listening to Lu Sweki expressionlessly narrating the battle in the southern border Miao tribe 7 Mile Cave, Ghostly appeared, and everyone fought fiercely. Reverend Daoxian's face immediately turned cold, while Shuiwen Master seemed to think more, at the same time also knew her own disciples' thoughts. Couldn't help but looked at Lu Sueki a few more times. When Lu Sueki was talking about Ghostly being ambushed by Li Sun and was injured by her, Celestial Sword wield Thunder True formula, although her tone did not change, but her eyes dimmed. Shuiwen Master softly sighed in her heart, closed her eyes. Reverend Daoxian waited until Lu Sueki finished, stood next to Shuiwen Master, looked at Shuiwen Master, snorted coldly, said, Zhang Xiaofan, that vile spawn. 10 years ago we did not get rid of him. Now we have really nurtured a tiger only to invite calamity. Shuiwen Master opened her eyes, intentionally or unintentionally glanced at Lu Sueki, lightly said, This is all fate, cannot be forced. Lu Sueki's face seemed to turn paler. Reverend Daoxian pondered for a moment, said, From what Shuiwen Master just said, in these 10 years, this person's cultivation seems to have improved greatly. Shuiwen Master slowly nodded, said, Zhang Xiaofan can instantly use Sinister Orb's evil power to suck the blood of dozens of Li tribe warriors, and after being injured by Li Sun, immediately counterattacked. Even Funxiang Valley's famous Pure Yang Jade ruler could not withstand. This cultivation is already no longer. She looked at Lu Sueki, said, is already not below Qi and your disciple Xiao Yikai. Lu Sueki was expressionless, but Reverend Daoxian slowly shook his head. Shuiwen Master, startled, said, Why Shi Xiang think I saw wrongly? Reverend Daoxian sighed, said, That evildoer was ambushed by Li Sun and was injured by Thunderblade True Incantation. Not only did he not die on the spot, instead he could fly up and counterattack. I guess he used Sky Song Temple's True Incantation, Great Brahmin Wisdom, to resist the power of Thunderblade True Incantation, then used our faction's Tai Chi Xianqing Dao to break Celestial Sword True Incantation's incantation formation. After he got near to Sueki, Sueki said this person's eyes were blood red. Sinister Orb glowed brightly. He must have used Sinister Orb's evil power to control Sueki. From this, we can say that he has combined 3 true incantations. His cultivation is high, most likely already surpassed our faction's disciples. He looked at Lu Sueki, said, But at that time, most likely he was exhausted, like an arrow at the end of its flight, so he could not harm Sueki anymore. Or else Sueki's Celestial Sword True Incantation would be broken. It would be like having no power to counterattack. It would be extremely dangerous. Sueki, this person seems to have combined Buddhism, Taoism, Demon, 3 great incantations. His cultivation is strange and unpredictable. If you meet this person in the future, you must be careful. Chapter 260. Ainan's lips moved. Her fingers holding Aeolian firmaments tightened and loosened, quietly said, Yes. Master Shuiyu looked at her, sighed in her heart, suddenly said, Sure, you must be tired. Go back and rest first. I still have something to discuss with your sect head, Shirbua. I will also go back later. Ainan answered, looked at Master Doyle Shun. Master Doyle Shun shook his head, smiled. Look at my memory, really muddle-headed. Shuichi, there is nothing here. You go back to Bamboo Height and have a good rest. Ainan walked out, first saluted to Master Doyle Shun, then said to Master Shuiyu, Master, I will go back first. Master Shuiyu nodded, said, You go. Ainan lowered her head and slowly left. After a moment, she disappeared from Master Doyle Shun and Master Shuiyu's sight. Master Doyle Shun pondered for a moment, sighed. What a Shah Danon. Alas, such a pity. Master Shuiyu said lightly, That child became like this. We cannot get away from it. Master Doyle Shun frowned. His face darkened, said, Shuiyu shimmy, what do you mean? Master Shuiyu's face was indifferent, but her tone did not change at all, said, Nothing. Shah Danon abandoned the light and went to the dark. We are also in the wrong. Master Doyle Shun said, Could it be that Shuiyu shimmy thinks what I did was wrong? Shuiyu looked at Master Doyle Shun, saw his face was rarely serious, sighed, said slowly, Shi Xiang, don't think too much. If it were me, I would also do the same as you. I just said, Sha Dan and his fate is heaven's will. Master Doyle Shun was silent for a moment. His face gradually relaxed, but in the hall, the atmosphere seemed to be a little awkward. After a moment, Master Doyle Shun slowly said, "You also heard it. Shueqi still did not see Yin Elon. Yin Valley Master, what do you think?" Master Shueyu snorted, said, "Yin Elon, that old man, always mysterious. Don't know what he's going to do this time. However, his cultivation couldn't be underestimated. There shouldn't be anyone in the southern border who could harm him, so we don't have to worry too much." But Reverend Daoxian was stunned, said, "What?" Shueyu Master looked at Reverend Daoxian, said, "This time you did not send the other disciples, and only sent Qi alone to southern border Funxiang Valley, and you did not even discuss with me beforehand." After speaking, her face suddenly turned cold, sneered twice. Reverend Daoxian frowned, said, "Junior sister, the reason behind it, I told you later on, didn't you not object?" Shueyu Master stood up, faintly said, "Although I do not object, but my disciple's character has always been unyielding and persistent. You know it. It is better to have some leeway in everything." After speaking, without waiting for Reverend Daoxian to speak, he walked out of the main hall. Daoxian looked at her back view, suddenly shook his head, gave a long sigh. Majestic Fox Mountain, Icy Stone Chamber. Ghost King Sect from Ghost King down, Qing Long, Yuji, etc. were all standing in the chamber. Beside them were Ghost Li and Xiao Bai. In the most secluded corner, Mr. Ghost and Black stood alone. Just that right now, no one had the mind to notice that dark figure. Everyone's attention was anxiously watching the great shaman standing beside Bai Yao's icy stone platform. Ghostly unconsciously quietly clenched his fists. On this occasion, he did not let Xiao Hui follow along. Looking at the great shaman's aged figure and Bai Yao's face in the white gas and light smoke, his already steel-like will also started to tremble slightly. 10 years of yearning, a nightmare that constantly haunted his heart. This hope, right now, was right before his eyes. The great shaman's body swayed slightly. The crowd behind him were moved. Ghostly could not help but step up. Even Ghost King, who had always been extremely calm, his eyes also twitched. The great shaman turned his head, smiled at the crowd, indicating that he was fine. The crowd then felt assured. Just that after a night's rest, the great shaman they saw today did not look much better than yesterday. Instead, seemed to have signs of waning. Every wrinkle on his aged face was deeply engraved, as if squeezing out his remaining life force. In the stone chamber, only the great shaman's gradually heavy panting could be heard. Ghost King and Ghostly, who was standing beside, looked at each other. Both saw the indistinct anxiety in each other's eyes. Suddenly, the great shaman shakily stretched out his hand. Pointing at that direction, it was that Hehuan bell that Bai Yao was holding. The golden bell stood erect in the fair hands, glimmering with gentle light. On the bell body, slowly reflected that aged hand that was getting closer. The next moment, the withered hand touched the Hehuan bell. Everyone in the cold stone chamber held their breaths. From the great shaman's fingertips, faint blue light slowly lit up, gradually brightening. Just that following the incessant flickering of this light, the great shaman's face also became even more lifeless, like dead ash. As if it heard something calling, suddenly, the Hehuan bell, which had been silent for 10 years, suddenly made a clear ringing sound, gently reverberated. Ghost King and Ghost Li immediately looked agitated. Both of them could not help but stepped forward at the same time. Just that after a moment they realized at the same time, and then controlled themselves, but their eyes were already staring intently at the great shaman's fingers. After that clear ringing, a layer of golden light slowly surfaced on the Hehuan lingling. Although it was not bright, but almost at the same time, the great shaman's face suddenly revealed a strenuous expression. In the next moment, the cold air in the cold stone chamber suddenly intensified. Everyone's countenance changed at the same time. To be able to stand here, which one of them was an expert in cultivation, almost subconsciously, Ghost King and Ghostly, as well as Xiao Bai, floated up. But just as the cold air instantly expanded, the gentle golden light on the Hehuan bell in a blink turned blazing, almost like a tangible fire, with a sound swiftly spread out in all directions in the stone chamber. The great shaman was the first to bear the brunt. His body was originally weak. Immediately his entire body was thrown into the air by this blazing light. A mouthful of blood spurted out. Ghost King's figure, like an apparition, instantly appeared beside the great shaman, caught his body. Ghostly at the same time appeared in front of him. The soul-devouring stick appeared in the air. A dark green halo of light appeared in a blink, blocked that earth-shattering golden bell blazing light. And Xiao Bai's white figure instead appeared beside the cold stone platform, raised her hand. A white light slowly descended, enveloping the Hehuan bell in it. The next moment, the trembling Hehuan bell slowly calmed down. That golden light also gradually disappeared. The temperature in the stone chamber also returned to normal. Everyone looked at the great shaman who was being supported by Ghost King. After that blow, the great shaman's 7 apertures were bleeding. Anyone could tell that this old man was already on the verge of death, with only a little energy left. Amidst the silence, everyone looked at each other in dismay and were stunned speechless, until a panting moan broke the dead silence. The great shaman slowly opened his eyes, struggled to stand up. Ghost King was moved, stretched out his hand to help, but the great shaman instead slowly shook his head. Ghost King silently nodded. A trace of admiration flashed past his eyes. He slowly retracted his hand. The great shaman panted for a moment, lifted his sleeve, slowly wiped the blood from his mouth, opened his mouth to speak, just that his voice was extremely hoarse. This lady's remnant soul is indeed in this Hehuan bell. Everyone was silent. The great shaman inhaled deeply, said, just that this Hehuan bell is a rare treasure. The spiritual power it contains is equivalent to forming a sturdy formation. Although this is the only way to protect Miss Soul, but if outsiders want to take it out, they will have to break this Hehuan bell. Speaking till here, his body suddenly swayed. The mouth that had just wiped the blood from, another mouthful of blood spurted out. Ghostly dashed forward a few steps, supported this old man in his arms. His lips moved, finally could not help but said, "Senior, you better take a rest first." The great shaman glanced at this young man, smiled faintly, suddenly suppressed his voice and said, "Don't forget that day in the 7-mile cave, what you promised me." Ghostly was surprised, nodded and said, "Senior, don't worry." The great shaman heaved a long sigh, slowly pushed Ghostly away, turned and spoke to Ghost King and the rest. The plan now, to break the Hehuan bell's spiritual power and without harming Miss Soul, I can only set up the Southern Border Witchcraft Soul Beckoning Guide formation. See if I can lure Miss Soul out of the bell. Cough, cough, cough. A bout of violent coughing interrupted his words. Everyone looked at each other speechlessly. Anyone could tell that this old man was like a dried up oil lamp. To set up this whatever soul beckoning guide, they really did not know if he could last till then. Ghost King clenched his teeth, stepped forward, cupped his fists, and said to the great shaman, "Master has done your best for my daughter. I am extremely grateful. Master need not worry about other matters. Just focus on casting the spell. No matter what the result is, Ghost King's sect will definitely not disappoint Master." The great shaman slowly nodded, a comforting look in his eyes, panted for a moment, quietly said, "Soul Beckoning Guide is an evil spell. It is not suitable to have too many people here. Will Ghostly Gongzi and Sec Head please stay and help? The rest of you please leave for the time being." Ghost Lee and Ghost King nodded at the same time. The rest of them did not wait for them to speak. One after another left. After a while, only the great shaman, Ghost King, and Ghostly were left in the cold stone chamber. The great shaman's face was pale, his body slowly trembling, but he could no longer stand. His body softened and slowly sat down on the ground. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.